All right, here we go. Drive time, Monday afternoon, 10 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. It is clear, but it is cold because it is December. That's how this works. We've gone over this, kids. You shouldn't be surprised that it is a very chilly Monday afternoon. We're looking at about 37 degrees. A little cloudy here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, as we have officially turned our calendars to December now. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts back behind the bike. Good to take some time off. Hopefully you guys did the same. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving day, a great Thanksgiving weekend. We have not spoken live since last Tuesday. We had a best of show on Wednesday, had some national programming on Friday, but we're back at it today with a really, really busy show this time of year. The latest on the college football coaching carousel. The latest on Kalani Sitake to Penn State. Lane Kiffin, after holding the college football world hostage, announced he is leaving Ole Miss for LSU and will not be coaching this team that will certainly be in the CFP and had a chance to potentially compete for a national championship. We'll get to the story from all different angles, listen to a lot of the kind of takes flying in. A lot of people upset, a lot of people mad at Lane, a lot of people mad at LSU, a lot of people mad at the calendar of college football. And I think there's a little bit of validity to all these things, and we'll get into them on the program today. Of course, Utah and BYU football wrap up their regular seasons, both programs taking massive steps forward. For BYU, third year in the Big 12, you're going to play in the Big 12 championship game coming up on Saturday against Texas Tech, the only team to beat BYU this year. And for Utah, a successful trip to Lawrence, Kansas breeds a 10-2 season. And we'll go over some of the bowl projections for the Utes today and kind of look back on the regular season. It's hard to believe that it is over, but that's kind of how this sport works. You get all riled up and excited to get college football back, and it feels like we all go make a sandwich, take a nap, and it's over. But we still have bowl season. We still have conference championship weekend coming up. And, of course, we'll talk BYU, Utah on the show today and look back on the weekend that was and look ahead to a weekend full of conference championship college football, the latest on the conversation surrounding the CFP. Does BYU have to win on Saturday to make it into the CFP? It feels like the answer to that is yes, but is that fair? Does BYU have a legitimate beef on making it in as an at-large team, even if they're not able to get it done on Saturday against Texas Tech? So a lot of storylines in that direction to get into, and we'll do that on the program today. We will talk some NFL football as well. Interesting Sunday of NFL action. And, of course, the Vegas odds have changed. Once again, after the Rams got by the Panthers, they were your Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl a week ago. And it feels like it's pretty wide open as a result of a lot of interesting results that went down over the weekend. Your weekend pro football will come to a close tonight with a little Monday Night Football. And, of course, we'll have that for you. Jackson Dart and the New York Giants head on up to Gillette Stadium in Massachusetts to play the red-hot New England Patriots. So we have a little Northeast footprint battle in our hands for some Monday Night Football. The Utah Jazz will take on the Houston Rockets. The Jazz 6-13 now. Mark Stein, your latest to write a piece about the Jazz looking to trade Lauri Markkanen. So some interesting Jazz stuff. You know, it's going to be kind of a season covering Jazz basketball, just like it was a year ago, where they've got that top 8 protected pick that goes to OKC. So regardless of any exciting moments that lead to wins, this is a team that simply has to continue to lose, and that makes it hard as a fan to care. It makes it hard as a media member to really cover it in any other way than with a lot of apathy. But NBA basketball, as we inch closer and closer to Christmas, that's kind of when we lean into some of our NBA coverage, and we'll get to a bunch of storylines on the show in that direction. Our first guest today played quarterback at the U. He's on our broadcast team. We'll look back on Utah's win over Kansas, look ahead to the offseason, what's next for the Utes, with Scott Mitchell, who joins the program today. Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it. Shout out to Sly, who will join us on a Monday to talk Utah football. And then we'll bring in one of our favorites to talk kind of national college football. We'll talk about the college coaching carousel, Lane Kiffin to LSU, what it means for LSU, what it means for Ole Miss, the calendar that clearly needs adjusting, what's next for Coach Witt. Matt Brown will join us. And then we have Tony Parks live in studio today for his regular hit. So busy guest list today. We'll start out with Scott Mitchell, move over to Stevenson Sylvester. Matt Brown will join us. So will Tony Parks, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Happy Monday. Happy post-Thanksgiving weekend to you. Hope you had a good one. And then that guy, Porter Larson, producing the show today. Happy Monday, young man. How are you?
I'm well. Happy Monday to you. Happy belated holidays. Hope it went well. Other than the travels, of course.
Yeah, a little bit of a delay. And, we're going to talk about this because there's a lot of rumors regarding Kalani Sitake potentially headed to Penn State. That is a conversation that apparently, according to sourcing that I don't have, maybe those conversations have been going on for a few weeks. Penn State has been looking for a coach for a long time. James Franklin is at Va Tech. But ultimately, I have to wonder whether or not how real these things are and whether or not Kalani takes that job. But every time I travel, I'm reminded of how easy it is to live in Utah.
How so?
Wildly easy to live here. Like, I don't know how many people that live in our state have an accurate frame of reference for how simple it is to live here as opposed to where I grew up. And I'm always reminded when I go home for holidays or just a family visit or whatever, and it's different depending on where you live. But, like, for instance, if you have a flight and you're leaving out of Salt Lake City and you live anywhere within 15, 20 miles, you can access our airport within about 20, 25 minutes. You don't run into traffic. And, yes, I know there are some folks like, but you have to walk to the B gates. Shut up. Shut up.
Yeah.
So, if you have that take, you are wrong. Shut up like you're a pioneer. Dying of typhoid fever, walking to the B gates. Like, can it?
Walking across the Great Salt Lake. You are in treacherous ground out there.
Whenever I hear anybody complaining about what is it, the C gates or the B gates? I don't even remember.
I'll be honest with you. Me on a plane, not a thing, really. So
I forgot about that. You're not a big plane guy.
So, like, I understand like the cultural tie to travel through the scope of Twitter and like. The one time I get on a plane every 20 years because I'm forced to.
It's just, so anyway, where I grew up, if you want to fly out of JFK, you're leaving 3 hours before your flight. Okay, you're sitting in traffic on the Van Wyck no matter what.
Security's tighter.
That's just the deal. By the way, I know we're big in New York. If any of the New York legislators are listening to our show here in Salt Lake today, I almost just said the F word in this microphone. Freaking finish your construction on the Van Wyck so we can get to the airport on time. And it's not just that. It's TSA. Yes. Oh, do you have TSA pre-check? Yes, we all have it. Okay, shut up. I don't know who I'm telling to shut up right now.
We do have a little New York listenership. You want me to pull up the map?
Yes, please. If you're listening to us in New York, write a letter to your senator or whoever's in charge of the lack of finishing the construction on the Van Wyck. You're looking at a 13-hour travel day. You land. Your boy's dealing with a sty today in the eye. That's very painful. Been working with some hot compresses and such. Ultimately, very excited to be back at work. But living in Utah is so underrated simply because of how easy it is. It just is. It's very easy to live here. I'm not sure how many people fully understand that.
167 New York City subscribers to our podcast.
Shout out. I think probably 80 of those are kids I went to high school with. But anyway, shout out to our New York listenership. Real quick, some on-air producing. How's your internet acting today?
Great. We're on air. So the internet here is good. Do you need some Wi-Fi help in there?
Potentially, but we have radio to do. So we're going to get through the first segment, and then we'll go to a break. I have restarted the computer, which is the extent of my IT knowledge as far as how to get back online. But Scott,
hit it a few times and blow into the.
I'm not Zoolander. I'm not going to start hitting my computer. But Scott Mitchell will be our first guest on a Monday afternoon. Before Scott stops by, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is now time for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
All right, Prize Picks, you guys already know it's the best place to win cash on football, but basketball is here as well. It is the holiday season, which is the best time of year for sports. Talking bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right, and that is with our friends at Prize Picks. They've got a new feature now where you can have early payouts, which means if your lineup gets off to a hot start, you now may have the option to cash out on those winnings before the game even finishes. Fantasy football for most people, pretty much over if you're not qualified for the playoffs, but you can play fantasy football every weekend with Prize Picks. Pick your favorite players, and when they hit their projections, you're going to win big, and there's no draft required. Step number one is go get their free money. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, we're going to get into Utah football today with a couple of our favorite guests, Stevenson Sylvester, Scott Mitchell. So we'll look back on the Kansas game. We'll get you ready for, potentially what the bowl projections look like, where we think Utah is going to land. So we'll get to some of that stuff in just a moment. BYU, their fate was actually sealed on Friday night. So on Friday night, of course, Utah plays on Friday during the day. And then Friday night, Arizona beats ASU, and that ended all the scenarios. Really, what that meant is that it's Texas Tech and BYU, regardless of what BYU did against UCF. And you could tell that there was a little bit, I'll say a little bit of a letdown. Not letdown. That's the wrong term. But for BYU, you have to wonder if finding out that they were in, regardless of what the outcome was against UCF, did that allow for a little bit of a slow start? Now, BYU ultimately comes back. They win the game by 20. They cover. So that really should not be that big of a deal. But unfortunately, where BYU finds themselves is still, even though they just won 11 games, they go 11-1, their first 11-win season, I believe, since 2001, the seventh 11-win season in the history of BYU football. Even though they're 11-1, even though they're going to the conference championship game, there is still a large portion of college football observers, media members, and folks that matter when it comes to the committee and such that have serious questions about BYU. Is that fair? In a way, probably not, right? But what the committee has told us pretty much all year long is they've been unimpressed with BYU's close wins over bad football teams. Football teams that clearly are down this year, not good at all. Colorado, and UCF going up 14-0 in the first quarter. You could hear the voices starting to make themselves heard about, yep, here we go. BYU is struggling once again with a subpar football team. How good are they? Now, as I've said all year long, and I genuinely believe this to be true, we just simply, in this sport that we all love so much, in this sport that we all love to cover, that we all love to watch, in this sport, we have to find a way to put more emphasis on, wait for it, the games that are actually played. And for the life of me, I don't fully understand why we don't land there more consistently. Now, part of me appreciates the formula and the approach when it comes to trying to figure out what is right in the moment. Who are you today, as opposed to who you were 2-3 months ago? They take into account availability of players and coaches. So if you're an Ole Miss fan, you are irate today. And Lane Kiffin's introductory press conference will begin in about 30 minutes from right now, by the way, if you're interested in that. Because, I mean, look, I don't think there's any way that you can keep Ole Miss out of the playoff altogether. They feel like a lock. But they do take things into account, the availability of your starting quarterback, the availability of your coaching staff. How are you playing right now? And, of course, their strength of schedule, their strength of record. BYU is high in both. There's quality wins. There's what they characterize as good losses, namely BYU's loss against Texas Tech probably should be considered a good loss. However, the issue is they got smoked. We covered the game all week long saying there's only one thing BYU had to avoid, and that is getting their ass kicked. And unfortunately, that's what happened. And that's why the questions remain when it comes to the one loss you did have. You got trounced by the team you're about to see coming up on Saturday, where you are a 2-touchdown underdog. So the conversation comes down to, is BYU simply one of the best 12 teams in the country? Now, of course, they're going to have to get into the top 10. The doomsday scenario that we talked about a month and a half or a month ago or so, with the ACC potentially being left out, that's back on the table, with Duke potentially having a path to get to that conference championship game. the committee basically has been telling us all year that they more or less believe that the Big 12 is a one-bid league. That feels a little bit harsh for both Utah and BYU. For Utah, you only have yourself to blame. In the two opportunities you had to prove that you belong in the upper echelon of college football, you blew it. You just did. There's no other way around it. And for BYU, it was that win against Utah and the Arizona win, now looking better as they're in the top 25, that has put them in this scenario where they do simply control their own destiny. It does feel like they have to beat Tech. I don't really see an at-large path for them. And I understand why that feels a little bit unfair if you're a BYU fan when it comes to some of the metrics that you actually do rank highly in. And if you're in a P4 conference and you lose one game all year, and that game that you lost was on the road to a team that you're telling us is a top 5 team, it feels a little bit punitive that you don't have the opportunity to get in. Now, of course, they could change the entire conversation simply by winning on Saturday. But the intriguing part of this game, to me, goes back to what was the intriguing part about the game they played earlier, and that is, can you at least show that you belong? Can you go down to Arlington, and can you hang with Texas Tech to the point where it's a 2-minute drive and Baron Morton miraculously finds a touchdown pass to win the game, Tech kicks a field goal in overtime, something like that? If that scenario goes down, there has to be a crack in that door that allows BYU in as an at-large. How confident are you, though, based on what we saw when BYU and Tech played before? Now, this is neutral. It's a neutral field, and BYU fans will show up for this, for sure. It's not a true home game for Tech. That game was not a fair fight right from the start. Now, if you're BYU, you simply have to show that that was an anomaly. That was an exception. That wasn't the rule. Now, for Utah, this was a really good season. It was a really, really good season. Now, the problem is, what sort of, anything at all will Utah have to show for this? It looks like it's going to be the Vegas Bowl. It looks like it's probably Iowa, maybe Illinois, and that's fine, right? And if there's one thing that Kyle Whittingham has done to this community when it comes to his college football team, it is the general malaise that we seem to be feeling today, the Monday after your 10th win of the season was accomplished on the road against a fine Kansas team. I'm not even really talking about that game. We'll look back on it with Sly and Scott. But just if you pan back and look at this from a macro viewpoint, 90% of college football programs would love to have the season Utah just did. They just would. It's a 10-win season. You're going to go to a good bowl. You're going to play a solid football team. But unfortunately, no banners will be hung. And, Coach Witt most likely will announce this week that he is gone. That's my guess. That's not a report. Let me be clear. I don't know that. He did basically surmise after the Kansas game and, was very reflective in a way that he isn't usually, and talked about how he was going to retire a year ago if it wasn't such a colossal failure on so many levels, mainly health, if we're being fair. So when he expresses that, I think that's a little bit of a sneak peek. And, of course, him getting emotional after the K-State game here in Salt Lake was another sneak peek. I do think coming back after last year, making sure that things are in place with a new play caller who, by all intents and purposes this last season, just killed it. I think he lived up to the billing. I think Devin did too. They're going to have to rebuild an O-line. That's going to be tough because that O-line was the best part of that team this year. Morgan will slide over a seat. It is now his program. This is my opinion. And as Kyle walks out the door, the bottom line is this season, to me, is a testament to what he's done for all of us, and that is make a 10-2 season in a P4 conference feel just kind of like, yeah, all right. It was a hell of a year. And Coach Witt, if this is it for him, deserves a lot of credit, a lot of praise from all of us that care about Utah football. We will catch a break. Our first guest right out of the gates will be Scott Mitchell. Stevenson Sylvester, Matt Brown, Tony Parks, busy Monday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. What the hell is this? What do you see? Every time I don't ask for a bump, and you just decide to go rogue, we end up being in this. What is this? What are you playing?
Evanescence slander, huh?
Why are you playing Evanescence on the program?
Giving away some tickets this week on the show.
Oh.
OC's show.
Okay.
Listen all week long. He'll give away some on the text line, just to be clear. Well, that was the impetus.
Well, in that case, it's exciting.
The song rocks.
I didn't know it was a ticket giveaway, so I need a reset. Evanescence tickets being given away on the Sean O'Connell show this week,
and I'll be there. So, just more incentive.
Wait. Are you working like on the crew like you do when
Security.
You're going to be backstage?
Maybe front gate security.
Like it.
Something like that.
So listen to Sean's show. He's giving away Evanescence tickets. Sean O'Connell, midday show, does a great job. Hopefully you're tuned in there. All right. There's a lot of, no, I'm not going to say news. I'm going to say rumors. Every time you kind of refresh either a social media situation or just a news outlet, the coaching carousel in college football is getting weird. Our next guest played football at the highest of levels, and one of the best to do it at the U on our broadcast team now. Happy Monday, Scott Mitchell. How are you, sir?
Well, I was really getting into that music, and so I'm glad you clarified that all for me because I didn't know who it was. So I think I'm gonna tune into Sean's show and hope I get some tickets.
Well, Scott, we will wish you the best of luck, and I think if I see Scott Mitchell wait, you're what? Are you 6'5", 6'6"?
6'6".
Do people get annoyed if you're at a concert and you're standing? Have you ever been asked to like sit down at a show?
I've never been asked to sit down, but I'm always conscious of trying to have a low profile if I'm. But I like to sit in the front. If I can't sit in the front, I like to sit on an edge, so I can kind of maneuver myself. Most of I've never had anyone tell me to sit down. Except for at a high school basketball game when I was cheering for my kids. That was a different story, but it wasn't because of my height. But no, I've never had anyone tell me to sit down.
Well, I would imagine you're also somewhat. I mean, you're a very nice guy. I've got to know you over the past few years. You're a sweet man, Scott, but you're also a large man. Do you feel like there might be an intimidation factor potentially?
Oh, most people are intimidated, but it's the funniest thing in the world. I scare the heck out of people, and it's totally a presence thing, and I think that's probably one of the common threads in my life when people they go, when they got to know me, he's a nice guy. He's not intimidating at all, but just from the mere presence of me, that happens.
All right, Scott. I don't know what the number would be. I'm going to go with maybe 80%, 85%, something along the lines of that percentage of college football programs that would love a 10-2 season, that would love a top 15 ranking. 13 is where the Utes will land after a 10-2 season, a 7-2 in conference season. I would venture to guess 80 to 85% of programs in college football would love to have what Utah just did. Yet the 10-2, 7-2, number 13, no Big 12 championship, no CFP path seems to have been met with a bit of a malaise attitude in our market. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and probably, but I don't think it should be. Look, the talent in the Big 12 is fairly evenly matched. And there's a couple of games, namely these last two against the Kansas schools, where it very easily Utah could have and probably should have lost, and they won. And then you look at the BYU game, and you go, had things bounced a little differently, you win that game. Same thing with the Texas Tech. I mean, you don't have the holding call. You make a field goal. You throw and hit a guy with a wide open touchdown pass. That game's a different game. So you kind of win some, you lose some. And that's just the nature of because the talent is so evenly matched. You could argue that with BYU has had a charmed season. They've probably won a couple of games maybe they shouldn't have won, and they got blown out of the Texas Tech game. So after watching every single play of this Utah football team this year, 10-2 I think is where they belong. With our rose-colored glasses on, we feel like we've got gypped. It's harder when your big rival at BYU is going to the conference championship game. They may end up in the college football playoffs before you ever get there, And that certainly didn't seem to be the trajectory of this team a few years ago. But I don't know if the depth of talent and the quality of talent is at Utah that has been there in the past after actually watching this. I think the defense was good, played hard, but I don't know how really talented that defense was at the end of the day.
That, to me, will be the main takeaway and potentially the biggest shock to the system as well. I mean, it's probably, Scott, just because, and they've earned this, Kyle and Morgan, benefit of the doubt, right? Like, at the end of the day, you just never even worry about what that defense is going to look like. And I think the walking line for a number of years when it comes to covering Utah football with Witt as the head coach is simply they're an offense away from winning conference championships. And now it feels like she was kind of on the other foot. What do you attribute that to most?
You know, if you look at the defensive line, they don't have that guy that's just a dominant edge rusher. You know, John Henry Daly is pretty close to that. I really like him. Of course, he got injured, but that was late in the season, and he really started out gangbusters at the beginning of the year and kind of, trailed off a little bit even before he got injured. The defensive tackles, kind of young, and so physically, you got to be stout, and that's what's been a mainstay of this Utah defense. Is that defensive front had an edge rusher and a stout. They were stout up the middle. You just weren't going to run on them, and you just didn't see guys holding their own at the line of scrimmage. And I don't know if it was injuries. I don't know if it was youth, because you get a true freshman in there, a young guy. Their body just isn't developed like other players. And you know, after a year, that's a different story. But true freshmen, that's a hard thing. And you get into and you need that rotation to keep guys strong and stout. And I just don't know that they had that this year. The linebacking play was average at best. Guys were not playing downhill. They were not coordinated in their gap responsibilities. They were out of position a lot all year. And that to me, I think, is the biggest shock and disappointment, because that's just never really the case. And with the experience, with what you thought was really good talent, I'm not sure it really happened. The secondary, you know, not having Ravid Evans, who was a really good player, and that safety position for Utah is so key and so paramount. And so you have Jackson Benny, who was just phenomenal this year, but still inexperienced and still trying to learn how to tackle people in the open space. And Teo Johnson certainly slid backwards in his ability. And so that combination of those safeties is critical to this defense and its success. And you didn't see that consistently happening. Nate Ritchie got hurt, and I think he really helped in a lot of areas that, I thought the corners for the most part played pretty good through the year. I mean, you get beat from time to time, but it was really those up front 7 people that just were never in cohesion. And they just, it was not one person. It was not one person. It was like everyone. Remember Morgan at the beginning of the year saying, "Are you questioning us? We know how to do this, and we get these guys. We kind of bring a good product on the field pretty much every year." And I thought that was a pretty bold statement, and I thought it was a pretty true statement, but I don't know that it was this year. And I don't, I don't know if it's, you got to get some better players in those positions. I don't know if it's growth. I'm not sure what the solution to it is. But the other part of it is that they didn't practice with the same physicalness through fall camp during the season, and that was because of the numbers. Don't have the numbers, so you got to practice differently. And I don't think that's something that Utah's used to. That physicalness is part of what made them so good against the run, and they never were able to develop that or practice that. And I really believe it showed up in the game, not only in being in the wrong gap, but also in tackling.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on the season that was for Devin, and we do have a bowl game, destination unknown as of now. It sounds like it's probably going to be the Vegas Bowl against a Big Ten team, maybe Iowa. But Simply from the raw number standpoint, he led the conference in QBR, 81.8. It's a grade that goes up to 100. Sorsby was second, 81.5. He led the conference in expected points added. He led the conference when it comes to points added via the run from the quarterback position. He was seventh with his arm. And then raw QB, which kind of identifies all of it, Sorsby 1, Devin 2. So the numbers tell us he was either the first or the second best quarterback in the conference all year. He came into the season with some questions about accuracy with 12 touchdowns and 12 picks a year ago in New Mexico. He threw for 22 touchdowns. He only threw for 5 picks, added another basically 700 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. So the numbers are good. It's 10-2. Your takeaways from the season that was now behind us from Utah's quarterback.
Well, I think there was a lot of really good, and I think there was a lot of bad. Well, I don't want to say a lot of bad because he did have a pretty quality year. Where I think in throwing the football, where he was really good, was when he got in the red zone, and he was very accurate in the placement of the ball into the end zone. And it's an art, and a lot of quarterbacks in college can't do it. And he had a really nice knack of putting the ball, if it was high into the outside or low, and where he was pretty savvy about where he threw it. It was probably the best part of him throwing the ball. The other part that he threw the ball really well was off of the RPO, and that kind of developed as the season went on, where he was hitting passes kind of over the middle of the field and down the field a little bit, and it was really good that way. He doesn't have a strong arm at all, and so everything it has to be kind of short to intermediate passes. And being short as he is, really hard for him to be consistent throwing those short passes. And a lot of times you call those plays kind of to start a drive with. They're high percentage. It's just something to get 4 or 5 yards and get the team moving, keep the defense off balance. But he had a hard time with that. And whether he could see guys, or last week he got a lot of balls knocked down, and so that was a challenge. Shouldn't be. Like, throwing the short game should be about the easiest thing you can do, and it was always an adventure for Utah. And then where he really struggled in the passing game is in the pocket, where he just purely dropped back to throw, and it was a problem for him because he was injured and he couldn't run. And so he felt like he had to stay in the pocket and really throw the football. And when you speak of the interceptions, I can think of 3 of them off the top of my head where he just was so determined to stay in the pocket and throw a pass that he just threw ill-advised passes, where when he was healthy and running, he would drop back, not there, boom, take off, and he might get 15 yards. But with his inability to run as explosive as he, was when he was healthy, it really hurt him sitting in the pocket and passing. And that was the challenge. You just, in the pocket as a thrower, that should be the 5th or 6th thing he should even consider ever in a game. It's just not his game. And so the question moving forward, because I think Bird Ficklin has that ability to sit in the pocket. I think he definitely has a stronger arm, probably as good a runner, and just an electric presence in the game. And so the challenge for me is, I just think back to UCLA when Devin Dampier was healthy. That was like scary. And if you have that Devin Dampier all year long, that's a really, really scary player. If you don't, you're going to have kind of this year where there was some good and there was some bad. But I mean, this Utah team won some tough games close, and a lot of it was because of the offense. A lot of it was because of Devin Dampier. So he certainly had a pretty quality year for sure.
All right, before we move off Utah, because I need your thoughts on this college football coaching carousel, and the latest is Kalani and Penn State are dancing a little dance. We'll see if that comes to fruition. For the first time, I think I feel confident saying we're going to hear this week that Kyle is done. I have not felt confident saying that at all, and I still want to be very clear that I don't have information that it's coming this week, but the deadline, I believe, for him to inform the program is Friday, and you understand why, as far as the timing goes. He was emotional, as you and I discussed, saying goodbye to his seniors on senior day at Rice Eccles. And then after the Kansas win, he admitted very publicly that he would have walked last year if the team was in a better position. Well, he comes back. They hire a dynamite offensive coordinator, and that hire's paid dividends. They recruit and are able to retain, at least for now, a really good quarterback under center. Your points about Bird Ficklin are well taken. They win 10 games, and we started the interview earlier with my estimation that 80% of college football programs would take the season that Utah just had, maybe more than 80%. And it feels like he has now left it in the spot where my guess is he feels comfortable walking away. Nobody, and you know this better than anybody, nobody retires having checked all the boxes. That just doesn't happen. And if it does, it's really rare. So if this is it, if we hear that this week Kyle has announced that this is it for him as the head coach for Utah football, what does this community owe Coach Whitt?
Oh boy, just real quick to your thought about no one ever ends on the right terms, completely. And I've been thinking a lot about this over the weekend, and how I can't think of a coach ever who did that. I really can't. I think of like Pete Carroll. He was on top of the world at USC, goes wins Super Bowls, and now he's kind of in an ugly spot. You look at Belichick, you look at any of them, and Coach McBride even at Utah, where so much for the program, and then the program went in a different. It's just really hard. It's hard to let it go as a coach, but it's hard to end it in a way that you just go, oh, I'm completely 100% satisfied. And I think that's why coaches are coaches, because they can just never get it out of their blood. They don't know when the time is to give it up. And I think that's even hard for Kyle, because he said before, he said, look, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like Lavelle. I don't want to coach until I'm, dead. And so I think he wants to get out of it. But as far as what he means, I don't know that there's a coach, Spence, in the last 30 years in college football that's done a better job of coaching than Kyle Whittingham. I mean, and you think of what he's taken, the players that he's had, the way that they've developed them. I don't think and they've really coached these players, and they've coached a toughness into them. They've coached a culture. They've taken a G5 program as a G5 program to 2 undefeated seasons. He's taken a team into the Pac-12, and I don't know how many people believe that Utah could ever go to a Rose Bowl, let alone go to 4 straight conference championship games. It's been remarkable what he's done, and the consistency and the culture, and I think the loyalty to the program. There's so many coaches. You see Lane Kiffin today, and you can debate whether it's right or wrong or whatever. But Kyle Whittingham, who's not a Utah guy, not an alum of the program, has been 100% loyal to the program. Someone asked me, what legacy I would label Kyle Whittingham at Utah, and it's just where'er thou art, act well thy part. And he's just done he's owned being at Utah. And he's acted well his part at Utah, I think, is, as good as anyone in the country. And he took a program that was, not really well known, and brought national relevance and respect to the state of Utah. And really, it just, to me, is one of the most remarkable coaching jobs I've seen. You get a lot of these coaches that just get all the players, and it's easy to recruit and all that, and they win. But when you don't get all the players, you don't get the best players, you find a way to be very competitive and successful in spite of all that.
Where thou art, act well thy part. Am I getting that correctly, yes. Scott? Is that biblical, or is that a Scott Mitchell original?
No, I think it might be Shakespeare, actually.
Well said, sir. A Renaissance man of sorts, a seasoned Scott Mitchell appearance on a Monday. Let me move over here. So Andy Staples was on Dan Patrick's show this morning, and Dan asked him as to why Penn State has not hired their head coach. And Andy, I'm paraphrasing, he said, the only thing I can think of is they're waiting to hire somebody that's coaching in a conference championship game coming up this weekend. And then several different reports over the past 24 hours have linked Kalani Sitake, to Penn State. So much so there are a few different, and I would call them reputable. I'm not talking about, dudes with podcasts that want attention on social. You're looking at Football Scoop, you're looking at a lot of the, big time college football outlets saying that Penn State and Kalani are discussing their vacancy. Now, we kind of do this thing here where it's like no one would ever leave BYU. No one would ever leave Utah because, of course, Lavelle was there forever. Witt's been here 20, 21 years. I don't know what BYU's paying Kalani. I know they restructured his deal, but I am quite certain that Penn State will come to the table with probably $10 to $11 million per year because they're Penn State. Now, I find this interesting for one dynamic that's going on right now. There's an excellent chance that BYU will have, been able to accomplish an 11-1 regular season, go to their conference championship game. I don't think they're going to win, and therefore I don't think that they're going to make the college football playoff. That's my best guess as of today. If you go 11-1 at Penn State and go to a Big Ten championship game, you're probably hosting a home playoff game, and you may be getting a bye round one. So while I get that Kalani is like a perfect fit for BYU, and I get that he loves it there and they've taken care of him and all that, from a competitor's standpoint, if you're coming off a year where you coach your team to 11 wins and you go to a conference championship game and they still don't let you in, maybe at some point you're like, I got to find a place to coach where if I do that, they have no choice but to let me in. What do you think he's processing as he's going through this process?
Well, I think the biggest question for Kalani is I think it's a personal, it's a moral obligation for him, and he's a very spiritual man. He's a very principled man. Going to BYU as a player, being the coach there is more than just a job for him. I mean, I think he almost feels as if it's a responsibility beyond just being a coach. That there are not many coaches that can coach at BYU. The pool is very, very shallow, very, very small, and I think that would be the overriding draw for him to stay there. And but if he looked at it like the way you're looking at it objectively for your career, for your opportunities, the question I would ask if I'm Kalani is, what is the level of commitment from the program to really being a top-notch team, and basically how much money do you have to spend? Because that's what you'll get a lot of good guys and guys that want to go to BYU and guys that want to fight. That's kind of about where BYU is right now, and I think Kalani's done a phenomenal job. I think he's kind of where Kyle was maybe 10 years ago. Maybe 8 years ago with BYU. It's remarkable what he's done at BYU. I think BYU's harder to coach than Utah is, and so that would be the question for me. How much money can you really spend in this? When I heard this about Kalani going to Penn State, I go, that actually makes sense to me. Like, Kalani Sitake is the type of person that would flourish in a place like Penn State. Penn State has been traditionally known as the clean program, the do it right. Our players graduate. They're good at people. My agent, who was in Baltimore, Maryland, he tried to recruit Penn State players that went to the NFL for that reason, because they were really good people. They were really good individuals. And so from the type of person Kalani is, it really made a lot of sense. And I actually think Kalani Sitake could just flourish at Penn State. I really do. I was actually, you hear these things, I don't know, but that one just seemed to fit. It just seemed to make a lot of sense. And he would be in a place that could just be phenomenal. And I think he could do very well there. I know all these coaches are getting entertained, and they're having people talk to them. I remember Lavelle, when he was at BYU, he was heavily pursued by the Detroit Lions, because he asked me about what it was like in Detroit, the ownership, and it was, of course, after the fact, because he said I seriously considered going and taking that job with the Lions, and of course he stayed at BYU. And so, Kalani, I think with him though, it boils down to, does the program, are they committed? Because we know the basketball program is committed, but do they have that same commitment to the football program? And I think if that's the case, then I don't see Kalani leaving. If it's not the case, and they're going to kind of have to be scrapping and fighting every year, I wouldn't be surprised if he took it. I would not at all.
All right, before I set you loose, Lane Kiffin kept the college football world basically held hostage for maybe a week or 10 days. And, the story ends with him landing at LSU. A lot of people that are plugged into college football have long believed that LSU is Lane's dream job. A lot of people blaming LSU, a lot of people blaming Lane Kiffin, a lot of people blaming the college football calendar. Probably a little bit of blame to go around. Ultimately, you feel bad for these kids because they have a chance to compete for a national championship and their coach is leaving them high and dry, and it looks like he's taking his offensive staff with him. Where do you land with this? I just want to kind of get your thoughts before I set you loose.
Yeah, the timing is terrible. It really is, but the landscape of college football has created this situation. I think the number one priority for athletes today is how much am I going to get paid, and I would venture that a lot of them will consider going to a different school if they're going to get more money. I look at Keanu Tunavasa, who is such a Utah guy through and through, and now he's at BYU. And if that type of thing can happen with the players, because the players aren't bound to be there. The players can go anywhere they want to go. The players will go anywhere they want to go. And I think, the coaching situations are similar. If you're at LSU and you have the ability to entice, a lot of top quality talent year in and year out, and you're a good coach, there shouldn't be any reason why you shouldn't have success. But I think from Ole Miss and its standing in the SEC, it's never going to get better than Georgia. It's never going to get better than Alabama. And LSU certainly can. LSU can be on par with those schools and win that. They've proven it. It's been, it's happened. And so clearly, probably he thought for him a better job. It's really probably really painful, when it's like stealing your best friend's wife and marrying her and then going to all the Christmas parties and everything for years after that. That it just feels bad because it's in the conference and it's just going to be awkward moving forward. But it's sadly the nature of college football, and those opportunities are out there, and people are they're just this fierce passion for winning that it kind of defies all logic and common sense and decency. And it's just, how do we get the best players and the best coach? And we're willing to do whatever we have to do to get them. And the coaches kind of feel the same way. How do I get to the best program? How do I get the best players? And that's what it is. And I think we don't have to tune in and watch it if we don't want, but that's what it is if we want to watch college football now.
Scott, good stuff as always, man. Have a great week ahead. Appreciate the time. We'll chat soon.
You got it. Take care.
All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. We'll catch our first break, or I should say our last break of the 2 o'clock hour, and we'll bring in Matt Brown for more college football on the other side. Keep it right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Lane Kiffin is being introduced as we speak as the new head coach at LSU in a very handsome purple suit. Purple tie, looks like a purple checkered shirt. To no one's surprise, that's where we will start with our next guest. Always enjoy my conversations with Matt Brown. Monday afternoon, Matt, how we doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I got to tell you, definitely didn't see my afternoon kind of spiraling into what it's become right now. But this time of year, you can't make any advanced plans. I was definitely going to write a story about Division II hockey. I suspect that's not what my audience is going to want to read about tomorrow. Yeah,
this is really the big news, right? And there are a lot of layers here, a lot of angry people. And that seems to be the deal whenever Lane Kiffin leaves anywhere. Like, for all the people who are like, hey, I think he's kind of an overrated coach. Well, people really seem to be angry when he leaves their school or their city. Look, this is one of the rare scenarios where I feel like I can kind of understand like every single side here. Some people are mad at Lane. Some people are mad at LSU. Some people are mad at Ole Miss for letting this happen. Some people are mad at college football and the calendar and how it allows this. What's the Matt Brown takeaway from how this all went down?
I don't blame anybody for being angry. I will say, and want to use my words carefully, I think anybody whose team is in the middle of a playoff chase or has already secured a playoff bid, who has a chance at a national championship this year, to see your coach leave during that process before the season's over is a real punch in the gut. I think particularly within the Lane Kiffin situation where all of this was very public. And Lane kind of used in his camp, tried to get some extra leverage here and limit Ole Miss's options, not only in their next coach, but what they can do roster-wise as they are really on paper primed for a potentially deep playoff run. It's deeply frustrating. This was a tenure that didn't have some of the same personal scandals or other things as other stops along the Lane Kiffin way, and has some different weird political flavors given the involvement of Louisiana's governor and the bizarreness that is everything that happens with LSU football. But I don't blame anybody for looking at this and feeling deeply frustrated. This doesn't happen in other sports. It doesn't have to happen in college football, and I think it's important to see how other coaches and other administrators and other people react to this event here. Is this something that becomes normalized now? Or do people say, like, no, if you act like Lane Kiffin, you're going to pay some kind of social and professional penalty for it, even if you can get another job? That's what we're going to have to find out.
So Keith Carter, who's the AD at Ole Miss, has elected to not allow him to coach during this playoff run. And a couple things here, Matt. Yes, absolutely. Totally understand that. Part of me was conflicted, though, and I will admit being surprised at my own kind of conflicted feelings here, because ultimately, if you are able to win a national championship, that's something that changes your athletic department, your school, and your program forever, no matter how you get it done. I'm not saying they would have won it. Nobody knows. And again, like, it feels like a very obvious thing, like, wait a second, you're leaving? No, you can't continue to stay here. But is there any merit to potentially allowing Lane to continue to coach the team even after he's taken another job?
I don't think so. And I think the specific circumstances are going to vary from school to school and coach to coach. But when we think back here, was there an example of a guy who was already coaching a team in the midst of a deep championship run, who had accepted another job and made things so awkward and was so impossible at doing both those gigs that he was kicked out early and told to just leave? Because that happened to Lane Kiffin when he took the FAU job when he was working at Nick Saban. Like, this guy made everything weird. What's different now, and I think what is a little bit different than the Tulane or the James Madison or some of these other situations here with other coaches taking other gigs, is that Lane Kiffin's in a position to take 30 or 40 guys with him if he wanted to. Not to mention a lot of the staff, which won't happen for many of these coaching changes, and they're division rivals. I don't even if you think that this might help you get a home playoff game or make a deeper run, I don't think you can allow a immediate rival to be in your building, looking at your plans and your recruiting board, and to have complete access to your roster while he's already working for another team. Like, I don't think that's the same risk you have with UCLA and Bob Chesney and James Madison, where they're not going to take 40 guys with you to UCLA.
Yeah, no, some good points in there. I wonder what you make of exactly why this seems to happen with Lane Kiffin, as far as because
Have you met him?
I have not, and that's why I will cede to you. I have not met the man, and when it comes to kind of doing this job, I try to bring on experts and let them kind of explain to me what's going on. I know he's respected as one of the better play callers in college football, but you always hear this like, hey, he's super overrated and maybe we'd be better off without him. And then he leaves, and then there's like people threatening to, tie him up by a tree, and people are losing their minds, flipping off his toddler son. What is it about Lane Kiffin and his career that seems to end with these dramatic exits from all of these jobs?
He's a weird guy that loves mess. There's no other way to put it. A lot of college football coaches are weird on some kind of level. It's rare that you have somebody who is weird and is so public on social media in a way that he kind of acts like we might, or fans of the institutions that we write about and cover might. He's somebody that already has, I think, a long record of maybe being promoted ahead of his maturity level, and has changed jobs so many times. He's given lots of different fan bases reasons to be angry about him. And when you're kind of personally off-putting and don't, have a reputation for great, warmth and deep interpersonal relationships, and you don't stay anywhere long enough, it's going to be easy for people to be mad. Now, you can call him overrated if you want, but at FAU, and at Ole Miss and the last places where he's coached, he's won. Has he won divisions? Has he won championships? Has he made deep postseason runs? No. But he's already at a place where consistency has been very hard to come by over the last 40 years. He's been an extraordinarily successful Ole Miss coach. Will that transfer to LSU? I have no idea. They're different places, different kind of tensions, and the man has, earlier in his career had a lot of self-destructive tendencies. But I don't blame people for reacting the way that they are. And when you factor in the fact that it's Ole Miss, where this is not exactly a Mr. Rogers fan base, right? What do we say about the SEC? It just means more. This is the kind of place where you are likely to get stuff thrown at you as you leave in a way that might not be the case at Colorado State.
Give me your opinion, Matt. And look, I know and I appreciate this about you. I know you've never professed to be like, let's take out the whiteboard and let's talk schematics and X's and O's. But what's your opinion on Lane Kiffin as a program leader and as a head coach? He's never been in the CFP. He's never won a conference championship, yet obviously people think highly enough of him to continue to give him a lot of money to coach their teams.
I think there's two things that he's legitimately really, really good at. I think it's quite clear based on his career as a head coach, as an assistant coach at all levels of football. He's a very creative offensive guy and has built teams that score points and that move the football in different ways. And whether that's run heavy, whether that's pass heavy, whether that's high tempo, lower tempo, he's been able to do that in different parts of the country. I think he's also somebody who is a strong talent evaluator and has been upfront and honest with the people that he recruits about the transactional nature of big-time college athletics. Lane Kiffin is not the kind of guy who's going to sit in your house and talk to your mom and talk about the value of a degree and the glory to Old State U and sing the alma mater and come be here for 40 years and let's be champions. This is I'm here to get you paid. I'm here to get me paid. Let's go win something, and I'm going to prepare you for the next level to make more. And for some people, that's off-putting, and some people that's almost offensive, and for some people, it's extraordinarily refreshing. And I have full confidence at LSU he's going to be able to build, on paper, a really good roster. There are also lots of coaches in college football that are more skilled at being builders than maintainers. They're different skill sets. And where you can just make everybody real mad after 3 or 4 years. And if you don't win the title, you wear out your welcome and you move on. That could happen here too. I think anything's on the table, But after the last coach that LSU had, and looking, just up the road and seeing what Ole Miss has been able to do, I get why they hired him. And I would say maybe it ends in a national championship. Maybe it does. Well, maybe there's a national championship on the way. Maybe there's not. There often is at LSU. But I think we know how the story ends, and it's not with Lane Kiffin gracefully retiring after 22 years at LSU.
Do you think there needs to be, back to the original answer to the first question I asked you, it just seems very basic, and this is a sport that for whatever reason they stand back and they watch the house burn down and they say, maybe we should install a smoke detector. Like, it's a little bit too late when the chaos actually happens, but should there be something that is in place where it's like you are not allowed to take another job as long as you're coaching a team that is going to qualify for the CFP? Like, should the calendar be changed? They're limiting the players' ability to transfer to one window that's coming up in a few weeks. Do we need to do something that's a little bit kind of along those lines when it comes to the coaches' ability to just pack up and move whenever they want?
I mean, I think that'd be great. You couldn't do this in professional sports. And the idea of taking a job and then sticking around through a playoff run before you left for another NBA team or something, that would be considered laughable. Part of the reason that hasn't happened are some of the same reasons why we don't have some of the rules around around player flexibility or compensation. You don't want to invite an antitrust lawsuit. But I absolutely think it would be better for fans and better for schools if there was a more clearly defined window when you could have these kind of negotiations and conversations. Now, there's a window for players transferring, but are they being shopped around all year round? Of course they are, sometimes by people who don't even represent them. And I'm sure those back conversations happen with coaches all year round as well. But yeah, I'll say it again. I think it sucks for anybody if your team is in the playoff hunt, whether you're Ole Miss, where you clearly already won a bid, or hypothetically another institution that could potentially still win a bid, but might not have secured one already, to lose your coach now and to have these conversations instead of talking about your football game to make the playoff or your next postseason game. I think that sucks. And I wouldn't blame any fan base of any institution in that position from being very bitter.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, the new transfer rules, Matt, if I understand them correctly, if you're a player, you have a 15-day window if your coach leaves, but you have to wait until the new coach is hired, right? And then you have 5 days after that. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think that's right. And there may be some variations depending on when this happens within the academic calendar. Because that's of course the other wild card with trying to create these windows is you don't want that window to be in like late January, even after the championship's over, because then it's too late for most people to enroll and still be earning credits towards a degree for that particular semester. But it does create a really difficult situation for the players, for the coaches, and for any of these staffers too, because if you're a GA somewhere or an analyst or any of these other downstream positions, there's no guarantee that you keep your job under a new administration either.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, moving over to a local story and I don't think Kalani is leaving for Penn State. I don't believe that is going to be the end of this story. But look, the bottom line is this, and you know this as well as anybody, BYU just doesn't pay their coaches the way that other major programs pay their coaches. Now, that's changed a bit as of late. They're paying their basketball coach a lot of money if the reports are true. They did restructure Kalani's contract a couple of years ago after the Big 12 became a reality. I've heard it's like maybe $4 million, thereabouts. I don't know because it is a private institution. And if Penn State is, if these talks are real, and look, I'm reading the same reports as everybody else. Some of them appear to be reputable. Others are bloggers looking for attention and, quote tweeting things that may or may not be true. My guess is this ends with him, being able to leverage these conversations with a better contract to stay at BYU. But if Penn State calls with like a $10, $11 million per year offer, BYU is not approaching that. And the other dynamic, Matt, that is interesting as far as what's occurring right now is BYU just won 11 regular season games. They're going to the Big 12 championship. And if they don't win that game, I don't think they're getting into the CFP, even if it's a close game. And I don't think they're beating Texas Tech. If you go 11-1 at Penn State and you make it to the conference championship game, you're probably hosting a CFP game and probably have a first-round bye. So if you're Kalani, are you looking at all of that and answering the phone and maybe really taking a look at this opportunity?
It's really tough because everybody evaluates different opportunities differently, right? And on one hand, I don't think I'm telling tales here or speaking out of line if I said that for most people who work at BYU in athletics or somewhere else, professional growth is important. Professional success is very important, but money is usually not the single most important thing, because whether you're an English teacher or a security specialist or a basketball assistant coach or any number of other things, if you're at BYU, you could probably get more money doing the same thing in another institution. With Kevin, yes, things are different with Kevin Young, and yes, the basketball team has a big payroll. That's generally not how working for that institution works. And that's okay, because money isn't the only thing that lots of people care about for their jobs. It isn't for mine. I think it's true for many of your listeners here. Kalani is a BYU alum. He spent most of his career in Utah. He's a member of the same church. And I know that he takes the responsibilities and both privileges, I think, of being associated with this flagship institution and being a highly visible member of the Polynesian coaching community. I think all that's really important. But yeah, you go to Penn State, not only can you make a lot more money, you're going to be able to recruit a different caliber of athlete and different depth of athlete. And what's happening this week, you're right, will never happen. If you go 10-2 at Penn State, you're making the playoff every single year. It doesn't matter if you got unlucky with the dice roll and you ended up only playing 2 of the top 7 teams in the Big Ten that year. You don't have to play Ohio State every year. You don't have to play anybody on any given year. If you go 10-2, you'll make the college football playoff, and you will have the money and the brands and everything you need to sign a top 20, if not top 12 recruiting class every single year. There's a lot of disadvantages too. I don't know if you've ever been to Beaver County, Pennsylvania. I have. That is Bob Knight used to call playing at Penn State a camping trip, and I don't think he's totally wrong. It is in the middle of nowhere, which creates some logistical challenges. There's a lot of baggage, and that's a fan base where it's going to be difficult to step in, especially given how successful Jan Franklin was, and then they fired him. So there's no guarantee that what works at BYU will work at Penn State. But I don't think I could blame anybody for listening to that call and having that kind of conversation. And I would say that BYU as an athletic department needs to have some conversations about what it means to be competitive at this level and what they want to do. Because if you take your basketball coach, top 15, top 18 in the country, and you have a team payroll, whether that money comes from BYU or Red Bull or Bagmen Unlimited or whoever, if you've got a top 15, payroll for your basketball team and you're paying real money for basketball coach, and you have, I think we could both agree, a top 20 coach in the country on football, and you're not willing to pay what the going rate is for a top 20 coach, which I think conservatively would be probably over $7 million a year, then I think you have to ask yourself why. Are you trying to say it's because you want to be at this level, be in the world but not of the world, or not participate in the same arms race? Is it you want to but you just don't have the money? Are you trying to do something else? I don't know. But here's a guy that I think would really like to be here, and you had a good excuse for why you couldn't pay him what he was worth before. Now you don't. What is it that you want to do? I don't know. I legitimately do not know how the story ends.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this unfolds. Nothing, of course, official. Andy Staples was on Dan Patrick's show this morning. Dan asked him why we haven't heard any news about Penn State. Andy surmised he believes they're going to hire a coach that is playing this weekend. And, of course, BYU's playing this weekend. So only time will tell. Do you have a rough idea of what a time frame could look like before this thing kind of comes to a head?
I got a similar text message that you guys did, and probably some of the listeners here in this market have, about a team meeting happening with BYU today. And I first got that text message before anybody screams at me from my people that were not affiliated with BYU or the state on any level. I'm not in the coach search news breaking world. Like I'm pretty upfront with folks. Like my core audience are typically athletic directors. And people at the level above coaches. And so this is typically not a world where I even try. But given the, where I am, the confluence of Big Ten market and ties to this area, things I become aware of some things. I would expect there to be some sort of resolution one way or another well before kickoff of the Big 12 championship game. I know that there's other people that Penn State is interested in too. Some of whom are not competing this weekend. We'll kind of see how it ends.
All right, before I set you loose, while we're in this space, we talked about this on the show quite a bit last week with a couple of guests. I think you'll be good on it. The Cincinnati fan base became, by conservative estimations, the sixth fan base, fourth in the Big 12, electing to utilize the F the Mormons chant during an athletic contest. There have been Colorado, I believe it's Cincinnati, a couple of football. Oregon was the other football program.
Yeah.
Then
Providence for men's basketball. All over the country.
Yeah, Arizona also with men's basketball. And I just, this comes off the heels. 2 hours prior to Cincinnati BYU, the LDS Church donated 27,000 pounds of food to the University of Cincinnati Food Bank to help their students. They raised $180,000 for the barber of Texas Tech, whose wife was injured in an accident with a drunk driver. And I am not of the LDS faith. I was raised in it. I'm no longer actively involved in it. But look, I'm cut from the cloth. They're my family. They're my friends. And I don't understand, Matt, why this seems to be so widely accepted. And then we get the obligatory apology from the AD on Monday. And then it's like, okay, time to move on. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on this and why it seems to be accepted across the country.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and this is something that I may turn into a longer newsletter if the news cycle allows for this to happen. It's a similar situation as you are, right? I'm not actively a current participant in this faith, but this is where I was raised, and most of my close friends and extended family are part of this here too, right? Like, whether you're still in the church or not, once you've set up folding chairs, you've always set up folding chairs. Like you're stuck with this on some level.
I feel seen.
And it is a little hurtful, I think, to continue to hear this, because I do think you're right, I do think many BYU fans are right. You couldn't say this wouldn't happen at a Notre Dame game. You would hear people say F the Irish. You would hear people say all kinds of rude and R-rated chants, but it wouldn't be F the Catholics. And I think part of that is because almost all of these schools, if you took 100 frat bros together and had them chant something, some of them are going to be Catholic. And when you leave the state of Utah, with few exceptions, there's just not that many Latter-day Saints on most of these campuses, right? I grew up in Ohio. I was at Ohio State, which is a much bigger school than Cincinnati. We probably didn't have 24 LDS undergrads. They were mostly grad students in the dental and medical school. I'd be surprised if there's more than 24 at Cincinnati, even though there's a decent number of LDS people in Ohio. When they go to college, they come out here. They go to Utah State and Weber because they want to be around other LDS people rather than go through Cincinnati. So I think for many of these frat guys and drunk college students, I think they literally don't know any Latter-day Saints and don't have anybody in their life to say, hey, don't do that, like they would for so many other groups. And there hasn't been meaningful consequences to really prevent this kind of behavior. Now, do I think that the student section at the University of Cincinnati is making some kind of concentrated political speech and expressing, dissatisfaction and frustration with LDS historical policy? No, I think they're drunk and they're just saying that instead of cougars. But you shouldn't do that. It's still hurtful, and especially given we're not that far off from somebody firebombing one of these churches. Words have meaning in everything that we do, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say that should extend to the kind of chants that we say at football games.
Yeah, well said. All right, buddy, appreciate the time today. Have a great week. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We'll chat soon, okay?
Okay, thanks, my friend. Talk to you later.
All right, Matt Brown, Extra Points is the newsletter. I'm telling you, it is worth your time. And it's worth a small price to pay. He's as good as it gets. Matt Brown is where you find him on social media. I believe it's I'll look it up. At Matt Brown EP is where you find him on social. And I use his newsletter as preparation for the show. He's a little bit of a North Star, so smart guy. Appreciate his time. We'll catch a break. We'll bring in Sly coming up. Stevenson Sylvester. We have Tony Parks live in studio. Don't forget, we have Monday Night Football between the Giants and the Patriots. You can hear all the action right here on ESPN 700. In the world of social media, it's always hard to try to fully understand what's real and what's not. There are several people that are posting very bravely and loudly that believe Kalani Sitake is on his way to coach Penn State. I want to be clear about one thing. If BYU wants to match, they very much can. Okay, so we need to get that out of the way. It's not about whether or not they have the resources. They're paying a basketball player $5 million for 6 months. They want to cobble together $9 or $10 million for their football coach. They can. It's not about can. It's about would they. Stevenson Sylvester knows Kalani Sitake very well. Sly, if Kalani has a chance to get paid $10, $11 million per to go coach the Litany Lions, of Penn State, do you think that's an opportunity that might be too good for him to turn down?
It's hard because money talks, right? Money talks, BS walks. But for me, and knowing Kalani, it's more than just money, right? Millions of dollars is awesome. I know for a fact Coach Whittingham has turned down multiple SEC offers, other schools' offers. It's not about that. And hopefully BYU can pony up. I don't think they need to go as much as Penn State or LSU or Ole Miss or whatever those schools would be offering. But, just make it a handsome, generous offer. He's a top-tier coach everybody wants to play for. You got media and ESPN and everybody just talking about his dance moves, for crying out loud. You just see how cool of a guy he is. Now, I've known he's been a cool guy since 2006, so that's nothing new to me. But the world is finding out, so BYU is going to have to step up. But I think essentially Kalani is bigger than what money would bring, and the knowing that he's coaching for his alma mater. But Kalani is more of a people guy, right? Take that money that you would essentially dump into him, that extra $8-9 million or whatever, pay his other guys, and that makes Kalani happy. So it's more about knowing who Kalani is. Well, of course, pay Kalani more. You got to do that. But take some of that extra money that, they would pay him at Penn State or whatever, and pay Jay Hill, pay Aaron Roderick, pay Sione Puha, you see I'm naming all these Utah guys, pay some of his staff, and Kalani spreading the love around is what he's all about, man. So I think it's a lot more than that when it comes to negotiations and talking to Kalani. But, we'll see when the time comes.
Knowing him the way you do you think Kalani's approach could work anywhere? Like the BYU approach that has led to this moment in time for him, could he take the Kalani way to Penn State and build up a powerhouse there?
Being that I spent time in Pennsylvania, even Eastern Pennsylvania, I know Penn State's in Happy Valley, Central Pennsylvania. I've driven through there multiple times. I think that model can work there. Now, everywhere, no. I don't think that Kalani's model could work everywhere. But I think Penn State, it would. Pennsylvania is all about football, man. They are one of those Midwest, the Midwest where it's like we're a football town with a drinking problem. Like that is Pennsylvania, especially middle Pennsylvania. It's all football, and I know that from playing in Pittsburgh. It's the Steelers. Your work schedule, everybody's corporations and businesses work around the Steelers schedule. If the Steelers play early or on a Thursday or on a Wednesday or a Monday night, they let people out of work early so they can go tailgate and be a part of that. That is what East Coast Pennsylvania is all about. So yes, I think Kalani's model will work because the community will embrace Kalani and especially the way that he goes about it. But he could, especially with all of the resources that Penn State has, he could bring top tier talent around and make people ride around that. So yeah, I think that model could definitely work at Penn State. Now, other schools in the South, I don't think it'll last long. And I think Kalani wants to be like Coach Whittingham is, right? 30 years at one place is what Kalani, I believe, he wants to have happen. So hopefully BYU can make that happen and keep him there. But as I said, it's a lot more to Kalani than the dollars. Everything has to make sense.
If this does happen, Sly, and look, if I'm honest, I don't think it's going to. I think he'll probably parlay the talks into a raise to stay in Provo. But if it does, BYU has to look at Jay, don't they? I mean, to your point, I'm sure Kalani would love to bring A-Rod and Jay with him wherever he goes, but I believe that Jay Hill wants to be a head coach at a program that is a P4 participant, and That's BYU. So if Kalani does make the jump, do you do everything you can if you're BYU to make Jay Hill your next head coach?
I don't know. Jay Hill, man, him being a former Utah guy, I know he's bought into the culture out there, but that's Kalani's culture. And again, that promotes Kalani's value. Jay Hill wouldn't have gone there if it wasn't for Kalani. Right? Yeah, the money was great, but Jay Hill wouldn't have gone there if it wasn't for Kalani. They spent a lot of years together, knowing each other, and Kalani's like, "Hey, man, I need you, and we can make these things happen." And the rest is history, man. I talked to those guys multiple times, from Sione Puha to all these guys, man, and it's just like I gotta support Kalani. Kalani is my guy. I love that guy. I'll do anything for him, and that's the type of atmosphere that Kalani provides, right? That's the type of atmosphere that his players play behind, right? And they believe in. So it trickles down to a lot, man. So I don't know. BYU will be scrambling if they don't secure Kalani for sure, and they're going to have to pay Jay Hill a lot of money. So, but for me, I think that it's hard for Jay Hill to take that. I know he wants to be at a P4 program. I know there's a lot of jobs opening up year to year, and just like everybody else, you got to take your show on the road. So it's going to be hard to keep Jay Hill there, even if it's for the head coaching job for one. But even as an assistant coach, it's going to be hard to keep him there because the guy's a star on the rise, and he's doing a lot of things. You've seen his track record from Weber State and building that program up, and what he's done just in his 4 years at BYU. He's an instant asset to any program, man. So it's hard either way.
I wonder. And we'll get to this. In fact, let's just get to it now. For the first time, and I don't know this, I'm not reporting it. I just think when you surmise, kind of connect the dots a little bit with Coach Witt getting emotional after the home finale. And then last Friday after the game saying he was going to retire last year, but the season was, what it was. He wanted to come back and make sure he went out when the program was in a good spot. Program's in a good spot. So I anticipate we're going to hear this week that Kyle's done. Morgan moves over a seat and becomes the head coach. Is there anything that makes sense about calling Jay Hill to see if he'd want to be Utah's next defensive coordinator?
Man, I want that so bad. I've been talking about that for a long time, man. I think signal calling is no easy task, right? You've seen the tumultuous defense that we've been playing the last 3 weeks of the season, and hopefully Jay Hill could be a guy that brings that in, right? I would absolutely love that. I know Jay Hill's a Utah guy, from his playing days. He's a big supporter of the youth. So I'd love to be able to bring him back and do that. And that would be something that I'd love to smear in BYU fans' faces. But I think that'd be a hard pull too, right? As I said, Kalani and Jay Hill's relationship is tight. I don't know how tight Morgan and Scally's relationship, or Morgan and Jay Hill's relationship is. But I would want that more than anything. That's the ultimate scenario. Calling plays on defense isn't easy, right? It's not like, hey, I have this list of plays and you got to know when. You got to understand the personnel. You got to understand that, and you got to understand if Morgan Scally's taking over the whole head coaching job, the way his defense is run is going to be very important, right? The person that runs that defense is going to have to know exactly all the nuances and stuff that Morgan has put in, because Morgan's going to have a high standard for his defense, right? Because he had success at the defensive coordinator room, so he's going to want whoever he brings in to bring in that same type of fervor. And so I think Jay Hill's the perfect match for that. So as I said, it's going to be hard for BYU to keep Jay Hill even as an assistant, let alone a head coach. I would absolutely love for him to go to Utah.
Sly, the final numbers for Utah's defense is they finished 8th in the conference overall and 14th in rushing defense per game. 14th. Only Baylor and Colorado were worse. That is wild based off the precedent that has been set. That's the side of the ball you played on. That's the side of the ball you dominated on. What gives? I mean, when the numbers are either average or really, really bad, that is a anomaly based off of what Witt and Morgan have done. What happened this year? Why are we seeing this?
Do we know the stats of what we were before our last bye week and then what happened after?
Yes.
Because, I mean, essentially what we are 1,700 yards of rushing in 3 weeks or 1,500, whatever it was. It was abysmal. We gave up almost a season worth of rushing yards in just a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. Because Baylor was rushing the ball too. They just had more success passing, and that's just who they are. But they were running the ball with effectiveness as well. I have no idea. I can't give it to you because I look at it, I understand, I can see like, hey, this person did this wrong, but I can't understand why, and then why it wasn't fixed. Right? You talk about halftime adjustments. You talk about, players having the incentive like, okay, I did this wrong. Let me make up for that. Let me make sure that I do it right and never let it happen again. And then it happened over and over and over again. It was gut wrenching, for me as a defender to watch our defense play that bad and give up that many yards. Just luckily we had an offense this year. Just imagine how dominant we could be if, we were able to complement each other. We have a complementary offense this year. We need a complementary defense, right? Imagine if we had a complementary defense and a good offense, man. And so it's the same old song every year. It's either we have no offense and defense, or we have no defense and offense. And it's really sucks. I wish I could put a finger on what the exact issue is, but I don't know. I don't know if there's injuries that we're playing through. I don't know if guys were, because the mistakes that I saw are mistakes that you see in spring ball, mistakes that you see early in training camp, or for guys who haven't been in the program. And we've got veterans making those mistakes. And so as I said, man, I can't put a finger on it. I don't know exactly what the issue is. I'm not in the film room because I can't hear exactly what I don't want to say excuses, because excuses are tools of the incompetent, and we have a very competent personnel. But I don't know what you could say the exact issue is. Just like last year, right? We're just like, I don't know why we can't score at all, right? We can't even throw an out route. We can't even catch the ball. We can't get first downs. That was the excuse last year. And he's like, I have no idea what, because we look good in practice, but we just can't execute on game day. And it's the same thing this year with the defense. It was abysmal, and I know that alumni and alumni chats that I'm in were sick because of what they were seeing out on the football field.
All right, now that we have there's still a bowl game, but the regular season is done, and every time it finishes, it just feels so weird because it goes so quickly. But Devin Dampier transfers to Utah with lofty expectations. And some potential critics pointing out, their concerns about what it would look like in P4 football because of the 12 interceptions, 12 touchdowns. So what would it look like? Well, now that we have the regular season behind, I just want to get your thoughts on what you saw. He led the Big 12 in QBR. He led the Big 12 in expected points added. He was the best rushing quarterback in the Big 12. He was 7th through the air. But overall, the numbers indicate Devin Dampier just had an elite season for the Utes in Big 12 play. Again, bowl game still in front of us, but what did you make of the first Big 12 season with Utah's quarterback, Devin Dampier?
All right, I mean, football is football, right? And you could definitely see what things translate, right? And I think Devin has mentioned it every single year or every single game this year. It's his offensive line is so good, he could tell the difference between being at New Mexico and being here, right? The big, consistent, powerful offensive line that's driving the running game to where he doesn't have to be, toting the rock as much as he has. He ended the year with, geez, I'm sorry if you can hear that. I'm on daddy daycare duty.
You're
My
good,
daughter
man.
is
You're right.
farting up a storm right now. I mean, just his offensive line is being able to pass, protect, and have time in the pocket. I mean, 22 touchdowns to 5 interceptions is a lot different than 19 interceptions the previous year, right? Like, that's crazy. And he's did a great job. And even some of those interceptions he could have did without, and it was just bonehead things. And it could have been even lower than that. I think he did tremendous with getting his understanding of what it's going to be like, and just imagine with a year under his belt this way of what it's going to look like next year. And so I give him an A+ from handling the media. Right. You said he came in and there was a lot of things hanging on this, a lot of pressure. And I think he handled it well. He's absolutely outstanding in interviews. Love talking to the guy. He loves playing football. And what I love about him the most is how much his teammates love him. His teammates talk about how much he supports them and makes them play harder. That is what you do as a leader, right? I can't say this enough. A head coach's main job is to be the ultimate motivator. Right, you have to motivate your coaching staff. You have to motivate your players, and all kinds of different adversity. You got to motivate them when the highs are high. Right, we're riding high. We just blew this team out by 50, 60 points, and then the very next week we lose. Or you could be like Utah this year. Right, we give up almost 500 yards rushing, and then we still win. But we have to get back out there and convince ourselves that we are good. Right, you have to be the ultimate motivator. Same thing with the leaders on the football team, from the captains on defense and the captains on offense and the quarterback. So that's why the quarterback is so important, because they affect everybody. The quarterback affects the defense. The quarterback affects the special teams. And I just think that he handled this role exponentially. He just did a tremendous job. I can't say enough about how Devin Dampier has handled himself in the midst of this, and getting Utah to a 10-win season, which is not easy to do in any conference, let alone this conference with the talent that we have. And he did it great. He did it great, and he did it even when he didn't play against Colorado, but he's still a vocal leader on this football team, man. So, as I said, I think that he's just done a terrific job, and I can't say enough about how I'm happy that he ended up transferring here.
For sure. Do you think it's possible to keep both he and Bird this year?
Oh, I definitely think it's possible. Now we just got to see exactly how that all plays out. But Bird is a talent, man, and it's just like the Kalani situation we're talking to. Is money going to be the ultimate motivator, or are you going to be here? Can Utah give up enough money to make it make sense to have both guys? Imagine the prowess that Utah goes into next year with both of those guys. Right, we found out that both of those guys are a serious threat late in the season. Imagine if we have a whole offseason, a whole training camp with both of those guys knowing what they're capable of, right? And so Utah would just be automatically in all your preseason polls based off of how great our offense is, and we can focus this offense on improving this defense, right? And so I think that. Focus this offseason on improving this defense. I think it's possible to keep him. He's young. He's smart. As I said, talking to Bert Finklin too, very impressed with him. He's very mature. You would not think he's as young as he is, interviewing him and talking to him and where his head is at and what he cares about. So, of course, we don't know the nitty gritty. That's a part of the negotiations when they're doing contracts here at the end of the season. But I think it's very possible to keep him here. Of course, I don't know, but I hope he stays. But again, look at what that does if he and Devin come back, right? And you got to obviously understand, what does Bird exactly want? Do you want more full-time reps? Do you want more passes? Do you want to be the guy? You see how that played out for Nico Iamaleava in UCLA, right? He transferred out when he had a golden goose at Tennessee, but he wanted more, and UCLA became the laughing stock of the whole NCAA. And so you have to think about that when you take on things. And I think that Bird Finklin, if he decides to take another year, he's the quarterback of the future. And you can't say enough about what experience brings to your game.
All right, before I set you loose, Sly, do you believe that this week we're going to hear that Coach Witt has decided that it is time? And if so, as somebody who played for him and has stayed close to the program and stayed close to him, if this is it, what does the community comprised of Utah football fans owe Kyle Whittingham?
Man, I have no idea. I wish I did know. I thought last year was going to be the year, as he said. This year I have the same type of feelings, but I interview him. I talked to him before and after we interview, and he's like, man, I love coaching. And I'm like, oh, does that mean that you're going to stay? Yeah, I don't know. He's such a competitor that it's hard to give the game up, right? Joe Paterno coached till he was damn near 90 because he just loved it so much. And then he passes away as soon as he's done coaching, because that was his heart, is coaching football. And guys like that. Coach Whittingham has said, I'm not a lifer like his dad, like Lavelle, but he wants to coach as long as possible. And he's in such great shape. And I know all he wants to do is play grandpa, but he just can't get that competitive nature at him. He's like 6,580 something straight days, 6,580 something straight days of working out. He works out every single day, even on church day. And so that's like 15, 16 years. I don't know what the number is. I think it's been since 2007. He's worked out every single day. And so this guy, he's just an ultimate competitor, and getting rid of the game or getting far away from the game is not going to be easy for him. So I honestly, I don't know. But to the second part of your question, what this community should do, man, I've been saying it since January. I think we need a statue. He needs a statue outside of Rice Eccles Stadium, right? And he's the ultimate Utah man, and I think this should have been in the year of wit. Is kind of how I prefaced it, and he's awesome. He's great in the community. Everybody knows him. He's a face. He's when they did the demo on the south end zone, he's the one who signed, a part of the rafters up there. And this guy is everything to Utah football. Him and Ron McBride has done so much for the University of Utah. Both of those guys are the epitome of what this football organization, this football community is all about, man. So for me, I say there's nothing less than a statue. I don't know where you put that. For me, it's at Rice Eccles Stadium. If you want to put that on campus so everybody else knows it, that's cool too. Maybe a secondary statue. But I think a statue is the only way to go for Coach Witt, man. Put him in bronze. Put him up there.
Sly, you're the man. Thanks for the time, dude. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Have a good week, and we will chat soon.
You're the man. Thanks, Spence.
Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it at the U. Of course, linebacker position. For all the Muss members that don't know who Sly is, get familiar. Played in the NFL. Won a Super Bowl. All those things. Brought to you today by our friends at Outlaw Distillery. Outlaw Distillery is the official spirits provider at our ESPN 700 VIP tailgate at each home game for the Utes. Unfortunately, no more this year, but they'll be back next year. They've got amazing drinks like their honey bourbon, their vodka, spiced rum, and coffee rum as well. Just came out with a new barrel-proof bourbon whiskey sitting at 133 proof. Very bold, very smooth. Bottles left. Get yours today. Fantastic with an old-fashioned or mixed drinks. Get a taste at either our VIP tailgate again next year. Check out every one of their options at Big Willie's Sports Bar, another fantastic partner of ESPN 700. They are the title sponsor of our buddy Sean O'Connell's show, Outlaw Distillery. Truly a grain-to-glass product forged in the history of the American West. Check out our friends at Outlaw Distillery at outlawdistillery.com, or found at every single state liquor store. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Moving high speed ahead to the Giants and Patriots Monday Night Football. But Tony Parks live in studio right here on ESPN 700. Justin Herbert's going to have surgery, non-throwing hand, and actually is going to try to play coming up this week. I think the Chargers might play the Bears, which is interesting because Tony Parks is live in studio. Didn't plan on doing a ton of NFL with you today, but I would imagine maybe for the first time in a number of years, you have a little hope as a fan of the Chicago Bears that play in the National Football League. Is that fair?
Most excited I've been about this team in 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even the year they went to the NFC title game in 2010.
Yeah.
Beat three third-string quarterbacks, 2 neutral site road games. You know, they had a number of things kind of fall their way. That was the team that needed everything to fall in place. This team, they can run the ball, focused, physical, fundamentals. They manhandled Philly. And actually, it wasn't as close as the score indicated. They ended up not capitalizing as often as they could have. So that was not just a big win. Following them all throughout the year, their involvement as they've just continued to get better. You can see Ben Johnson was the right hire. And then of all things, because Caleb's been like the main focus, Caleb Williams, I actually think he's kind of the missing piece here. If he could be more consistent, they've got a real shot to win this whole thing, Spence. They're real. They're very, very real. And all the previous years that the Bears have ever had a great team, there were loose ends.
Yeah.
There were real loose ends.
Yeah.
The things that matter most, this team has in place. And so it's exciting. And that city is on fire right now.
As it should be, man. I mean, look, that's a tough division with the Packers and the Lions. And, you know, it's funny because, when the Jets went to the AFC Championship game back in 2009, no part of me was like, this is a good team. It was just like a lucky run. The defense was awesome.
Right.
Sanchez, just don't screw it up. Anyway, bury the lead, man. How are you? Good to see you.
Oh, man, I'm great, man. Good to see you. Good holiday?
Oh, for
all that
sure.
Fun stuff?
Yeah, back east. And, it's funny. I was telling Porter this. And because today, the big piece of news, and by the way, during the break, On3 has now reported, and the reason I'm bringing up On3 is we're talking Brett McMurphy, we're talking, we're talking Pete Nakos, we're talking about some of the more plugged in Chris Lowe, we're talking about some of the more college football media members that are plugged in are now reporting that Kalani is Penn State's top target. So we'll see what the offer is. I want to get into it. But I was thinking about this earlier today based off this story, and you have frame of reference because you spend time in Chicago and elsewhere. Whenever I'm home, I just realize how easy it is to live in Utah and how easy it is to live in Salt Lake. Like, because we had to fly out yesterday, and my dad's like, he's like, what time's your flight? I'm like, we take off at 4. He's like, all right, we'll leave the house at 12:15. I'm like, what?
What?
He's like, yeah.
Were you
JFK.
JFK, okay.
Yeah, so we leave the house at 12:15. It takes 2 hours and 20 minutes to get to the airport. You take the exit, you're on the Van Wyck, and there is no such thing as clean traffic. And it is a one-way street to JFK. You can't get off in, like, Queens and take round street. Like, you have to take the Van Wyck to JFK. Sit on the tarmac. It's cold. It's super crowded at TSA. It was essentially a 13-hour travel day. And here in Salt Lake, you can get to the airport within 10, 15 minutes. There's never traffic. TSA is rarely crowded. It's so convenient to live here. And, I think oftentimes a lot of people will complain about the cultural oddities or whatever it is that doesn't make you feel comfortable. The convenience of living in this market is almost second to none. I'm telling you.
It is. Now, did you have to cross bridge out there? Or
no,
were you just you were already on
I
that
guess
side.
we come over the Whitestone, but that's because we're coming from Connecticut. But then you're literally funneled onto the Van Wyck. You have no choice.
Yes.
And they have been doing construction on the Van Wyck since we moved there in 1990. And I'll tell you why. There's one family that's in charge, and they have the contracts for both the equipment and the work. So they leave their equipment out there without it being used because they're racking up money. They have all the contracts. It doesn't incentivize. It doesn't incentivize them to finish the project because they're making money. Nobody gives a rip about this, but it just reminds me that it's so simple and easy to live in Salt Lake.
You're 100% right about that. 100% right. Anytime Nat and I ever have to travel, it's Midway if possible. Please, please, Midway. If we have to go O'Hare, it is just a nightmare. No bags.
Yep.
If we do have to go O'Hare, pick up at the Frontier Airlines drop off. That's how we do that. I mean, everything TSA pre-check, it has to be added right up.
Yeah.
Everything about O'Hare is terrible. O'Hare, whoever designed O'Hare was like, hey, this makes no sense. Sure, let's just do it.
Just do it anyway.
Where's Terminal 4? There isn't one. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah.
Let's just do that.
This is the busiest baggage area. How many carousels do you want? 2. It's like, what happened here? Anyway, to your point, Salt Lake's amazing. Your airport's amazing. Your city's amazing. Mm-hmm. Your traffic isn't bad. I love Utah so much. Every time I'm in Chicago and we talk about Utah, and every time I'm in Utah and I talk about Chicago, same exact thing. Each place has a shred of truth to its reputation, way overblown, ridiculously overblown in every single way. Chicago's magnificent. I live in the city when I'm there, and it's absolutely spectacular. And when I'm here, anywhere you want to be is great. So, man, but when I heard you were traveling on the worst airport day ever, I used to work in airport hotels, and that was the busiest night of our life was Sunday night after Thanksgiving. So I'm just glad you made it. Yeah, honestly.
It was ridiculous. And I just limp into my house and I just crash on the couch. I'm like, man, that is just not worth it. And I by the way, side note, Chicago, one of America's great summer cities. Just get it out there. My son actually had his first Chicago experience. FaceTime me at night. He had already had like 3 dinners and he was walking home with a pizza. He's like, I had to try the pizza. Because we're New York pizza snobs, but like a piece of Chicago, even though it's lasagna, let's not get into it.
Don't start with it.
It's very good, and you should try it once upon a time. But honestly, thinking about this topically today, because that's kind of how you approach the show, I wonder if the convenience of Utah is one of the reasons why Sloan stays here 2 decades. Witt never wanted to leave. Right. And we have so many coaches that just like even Jason Christ, RSL's coach, was here for, I think, 9 years, took a couple of opportunities, but he and his wife could not wait to get back to Utah.
Right.
And if you're Kalani, there's a lot of things you have to weigh. Certainly the paycheck. And if you have a chance to create generational wealth where your great, great, great grandchildren can look at you as the man that paved this pathway for a great life, you got to look at that. If Lane's getting 13, Penn State's probably offering 10, and BYU, let me be clear, they could match if they wanted to. Okay, it's not about lack of funds. It's about the belief system that's in place and how they go about their business of paying coaches. The other thing, Tony, before I get your thoughts on this Kalani to Penn State story, and by the way, it's not official, but legitimate college football media members are now reporting that he is their preferred candidate. There's a good chance, and I actually believe this is what is going to happen. BYU just won 11 games. They've done that 7 times in their program's history. The last time was 2001. They're going to go to the Big 12 championship game, and I just don't think they're going to beat Tech. And then I think they're going to be out of the CFP. I don't think they're getting in. You go 11-1 at Penn State, and you go to your conference championship game, chances are, A, you're hosting a CFP game. B, you probably have a bye. So at what point does Kalani, just the person, look at the potential payday? And at what point does Kalani, the competitor, do the calculation and say, okay, can I do any better than I just did at BYU and I'm still left out? Like, where do I need to go to be able to get access to compete for a national championship? I don't know. What sort of factors do you think he's weighing?
Nah, I think there's a lot to factor into this. First of all, when you talk about, Jerry Sloan, Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake, Stu Morrill, Randy Ray, Lavelle Edwards, and we can go on and on and on with different people that found success, sure. But not only did they want to be here, they stayed here after their career. Elaine Elliott.
True, good
is
point.
another one, right? Like, I can go off on names.
Did you say Frank?
What's that?
Frank? Did you say Frank?
Frank Layden? Yeah, there's another one. Yeah. But like Elaine Elliott, I could go off on the names of the people. They love it here. And you don't know until you get here. And I've heard people, brag up or talk highly about other places they've been, whether I've been in Missoula or whatever place. And every place has its own unique part that makes it special. But this one here, no better place to raise a family. Your fan base is so incredibly supportive. How about the fact that you weren't looking too hot there early? You had the worst season in the history of my lifetime in BYU football. You lost to UMass at home. You were 4-9. You were a disaster. Not you, but your
UMass game. I forgot about
right.
that, yeah.
And guess what? The program, the market, and everybody had patience, support, belief. Mm-hmm. Kyle Whittingham, dump trucked by Wyoming, stonewalled by New Mexico. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shut out by UNLV. Didn't look good. Mm-hmm. Patience, support, belief. And these coaches broke through and had success. Lavelle Edwards even, took a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden he broke through, right? Like, this is really, really cool to see from a number of different people in this state. I believe that this market has been very, very good with having patience, understanding, support, and everything that an organization wants. How about Will Hardy with the Jazz? I mean, in an unfair world, he would be blamed for what's happened the last 3 years. And I kept saying, this dude is not to blame. And he gets a 6-year extension. Tom Thibodeau, Eastern Conference Finals. See ya.
Yep.
So when you really look at what Utah is, the fan base and the support, the patience, the understanding of all these things, it's appreciated. I always feel like the fans, they're passionate, but they're not like rabid, like what the Eagles offense coordinator just got his house egged. You're hearing about all this stuff. You just talked about, okay, Kalani just won 11. If he did that at Penn State, he'd be hosting a game. He'd be doing this, that. But yeah, James Franklin just had him on the doorstep of going to the national championship game. Started this season, Team had some pressure, lost some close games, boom, gone. See ya. You just can't do this here. You lose a close game to Ohio State, coin flip game. 2 teams are really good. Nah, he just can't do it. He can't do this, he can't do that. It's like, man, look at Ryan Day, Ohio State. I give him credit. They're patient. They weren't happy, but they were like, we know you're capable. Now look. They haven't lost a game since that loss to Michigan last year.
Michigan was his last loss.
Which was inexcusable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it wasn't as happy as I was.
But Tony, to your point, people were calling for his, like Ohio State fans were calling for his job after the Michigan loss last year. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it isn't for the expanded playoff, he doesn't survive it. He had to win the Natty, and he did. But, like, the thing is, you go to Penn State, and if you're like, hey, hang with us, patience, process, nope, that's not how it works there. And they will be ridiculously unfair. And that's the way that'll be. And you're Kalani, you're at BYU. I think they have a great formula to be successful long term. I think they have so many things in place, the support, everything you want from an institution that in a previous era was restricted in so many ways and now is allowed to do what they do. Mm-hmm. Now, should he get more money out of this? Sure. Can he pay his assistants more? Absolutely. I don't live in Kalani's world. I don't make these decisions as a person in that profession. But as I look at it and I go, sure, you can try those waters out. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But, man, I look at all these other coaches, and I don't think ever staying like all these coaches did. I don't think it was small-minded. I don't think it was that they were incapable. I think it's that they're going, actually, I really get a lot of what I need here and more.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to consider because all your points are well-founded, and it's kind of the juxtaposition between the security that Kalani has right now and will continue to have in Provo, and then on the other side of the coin, do you want to be great? Like, do you want to potentially take a job that could lead you to being considered as one of the best to potentially do this? Because winning national championships at a blue blood school like Penn State, it puts you in the conversation of the Urbans and the Sabins. And, look, can he do it at BYU? Can you win a national championship at BYU? Because I have this conversation about the local college football landscape all the time. Because if BYU gets off to this hot start or if Utah gets off to this great start, some of the homers masquerading as media members start talking about Heisman trophies and national championships. And I just feel like Utah, for instance, a really, really good football program. Can they ever be on the level that the Ohio States and the Blue Bloods are on every year? BYU, really good football program. Kalani, really good coach. Just won 11 games of the Big 12. But for me, there is a gap between Utah and BYU and their ceiling, what they could conceivably be, and the gap of what an LSU could conceivably be with all their resources. So if you're Kalani, to your point, you are weighing the risk of taking a job where you are a couple of losses away from the heat being really, really hot, and you might be one bad season away, to your James Franklin point, of looking for another job.
Right. Compared
to the security you could have here. But the payout, if you take the Penn State job and you're great in that footprint, potentially could be greater than anything he could ever accomplish at BYU, right? And so those are the dynamics you have to walk through, and I just don't know where he would land with it.
I don't know where he would land with it. Knowing Kalani, it's never been all about him.
Mm-hmm.
There's some coaches out there, it's all about them. Yep. And by the way, in their business, sometimes I'm not even going to say I blame them.
Sure.
I mean, they can go be great and lose a job. A head coach can lose a job because the wrong donor didn't like that they didn't get the right amount of access to something that a previous coach gave them access to, and now there's negative emotions, and they lose everything on a relationship deficit that was pathetic over a person who doesn't know anything about the game.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
who would literally walk into the offense coordinator's room and be like, "We need to play cover 2." And they'd be like, what? Yeah, you heard me. Seriously, that it would shock you, the stories I've heard on people who have influence. So the point is, you get to deal, in my opinion, for Kalani, you have so much more alignment there at BYU. Not just belief system and all that. Alignment. You've built this from where it was. You've built this program to the point where it can be a real threat to win the Big 12 every year, with good talent, great recruiting, money to spend, great coaches, good things like that. So you wrap that into the fact that you go to Penn State and there's just going to be some unknowns there, which take them on. I'm fine with that. But it is going to be really difficult for you to be able to survive even the mildest amount of uncertainty from that fan base.
Yeah.
So you'd need a lot of promises, a ton of money to spend, and you would need to properly forecast how you were going to operate it, much like Lane Kiffin, LSU, in my opinion, to make that jump. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to do his due diligence, but for me, as I envision Kalani, it's not that I don't think he could win at a bigger program. I like him with what he's doing at BYU and what he can do going forward.
Yeah, I'm sure the buyout will be massive, as it is with all these new deals. I'm sure if these conversations are real, Kalani's agent, good reputation of being a smart guy. He's looking for a guarantee of 6 or 7 years. I bet Kalani's agent is looking at what Lane just got and said that's what it's going to take. I don't know if Penn State would go $13 million a year, but I bet he's saying, okay, it's 8 figures. Okay, we're going 10 at the start, and you have to give him 6 or 7 years of guaranteed money. And by the way, if you fire him after 2, you're paying him $60 million. All these things certainly will be on the table. But I often think about it through this lens as well. And I'm not pretending to speak for anybody, because I don't know what Jerry Sloan would say in an honest moment if you said to him, hey, do you ever regret not taking the Laker job when you had a chance to take the Laker job? Do you ever regret not taking that job? Or if in 5 years, when Coach Witt has decided that, yes, I actually will do some media and speak honestly, because the funny thing about how all this stuff works is a lot of coaches, a lot of players, a lot of front office guys, they'll retire or they'll get fired. And even the ones that hated the media or were adamant that they would never do that finally get to a space where they're like, okay, you know what? I am willing to talk in a way that I wasn't willing to talk 4 or 5 years ago. And so when that time comes with Kyle, I wonder if part of him was like, you know what? I would have liked to see if my concept works at Tennessee when I had the opportunity to jump to the SEC. If you have opportunities, it's always interesting to me to figure out whether or not you want to see if your skill set can survive in a bigger market with brighter lights, with more pressure, or if you're fine just being more comfortable in a place like Salt Lake. It's one of the things that I've always respected about my father, right?
Yeah.
Did the thing here with the Jazz, did the thing here, kind of helping the plans for the building, get set. Things got a little loose with Larry, and he said, I want to try this in New York. I'm going to go back to the biggest stage and see if it works, right? And I think it really paid off for him, where a lot of people in his shoes simply would be fine living here, working here. And I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. As we started the conversation with what a great place it is to live. And in a profession where you are hired to be fired, I value security. And I know what moving can do to a family. And Kalani has multiple children. I know what losing a job can do to a marriage. I know what jumping here or there can do, just the dynamic of how you exist as a person. But it is this balance of, here you have the security. You can keep this job for probably as long as you want. But is there a part of you that wants to go show the world, yes, your concept works on a much bigger stage?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you could have that. I think it's interesting, too, because I've seen some people in different professions and different things where they played small, where they actually just were too fearful and did not really go after it, didn't really take big shots, big opportunities, for whatever reason. And then I saw other people where they were like, no, I very well could have had success there. Jerry Sloan, I very much believe he could have, what he does, could have worked other places.
Jerry could have had the Laker job.
But here's the thing with Jerry. Jerry understood, with the support of Larry and a good front office, there's one kind of tax you just can't measure, and it's called the BS tax. Jerry, 95% of the BS, he never had to handle it.
Yeah.
Do you realize how many fires Larry Miller put out before anyone knew there was a match? Do you understand what it was like to manage Karl Malone? I'm not even being disrespectful to Karl. The ego, the bizarre rationale at times, and the attitude, and this and that. Okay, yeah. And like Jerry could just coach. Phil could just coach. They could just go back to work and do what they do. And Larry would put like I said, he put out fires before anybody knew there was a match. Okay. Then Larry's gone. And what is it, 2 years later, a year and a half later, there's an issue with a key player in Darren Williams.
Yeah.
And this isn't even an insult to people who then stepped in. You couldn't know how to do what Larry did the way he did it over all those years. There's no way you could. That's a wealth of knowledge over decades and decades of running a business. That's a literal level of expertise. To me, there's real value in that. Where, okay, I can do my job, and there's this BS here I don't have to deal with, and then it gives me a chance to be successful. I go somewhere else, and I might be like, hey, we got this issue here. And I might have a boss who's like, I don't really know what to tell you. We're kind of scared of him. It's like, well, now what? Now you're like, oh, so now I got all these other headaches I didn't even know about. It's not even the pressure and can I be successful and would I do work? It's what kind of environment am I really surrounded by? What kind of support do I really, really have?
Yeah.
And so Larry had that. I think Kyle has definitely had that. And it's not just, security and comfort. It's just like I have alignment. When Jason Benetti during a broadcast against USC said, is there any program in the country that's better at problem solving than Utah and Kyle Whittingham? And it's like, no, there isn't. But Kyle's ability to manage that, he also had great support elsewhere. Now, Kyle may have built it and structured how it works organizationally, but everybody around him, he now knows the nonsense is minimal. There's real value to that.
There is. Yeah.
There's the places I've worked, that's what I love.
Yeah.
Can I go and perform and do what I do? And then how do I minimize the bizarre left field nonsense that I don't have to deal with? Once that stuff happens, you really love where you go to work and what you do. I think BYU, Kyle has it with Utah. Kalani has it with BYU. I think a lot of people have it with the place that they've been. And I think that's good leadership, good organizational functioning that has helped coaches be here a long time.
And you hit on a key term. And I was actually talking to my father about this recently, and that is, what do you value? Because my pop currently is working on this book, and I can't wait for him to finish it. It's still in the works, and it's about building championship culture. And throughout the course of this project, he has sat down with Mike Krzyzewski. He sat down with Greg Popovich, luckily before Greg was ill. He went over and sat down with Real Madrid. He sat down with the people around the All Blacks in New Zealand, the rugby team, and then recently met with Steve Kerr. And the intro to that conversation, when my father asked, like, okay, what are the things that you think have led you to the success? You won championships as a player. And if we're honest, Steve inherited a decent backcourt in Steph and Clay. So it always helps when you have guys that could play. And Steve said, I asked, and this is a Pete Carroll principle as well. He said, I asked the players who play for me and the coaches who coach for me the same thing. And that is, what do you value? Number one, let's identify what you value, right? And so if we utilize that dynamic and bring it into this exercise, as Kalani apparently is talking to Penn State about taking the job, if you're Kalani, do you value the things that you just outlined? Very well. Do you value the security? Do you value the alignment? Do you value the fact that you probably can coach that team as long as you want to coach that team? Or is there a fire inside you where you value the chance to step on the biggest stage in your sport and show the world that your concept works there? We know that it works here. You did it here. If we're honest, this is still a small pond, a growing pond. We're media market 28, and it's up from 32 5 years ago. And I would guess in 4 or 5 years, we could be media market 22 or 23. If you look at the cities ahead of us, we're growing with the population. We just added hockey. The Olympics are coming in 2034. But if we're honest, Kalani, Kyle, Jerry, Quinn, Jason Christ, whoever it is, you are a big fish in a small pond. You just are. That's fine. Is that what you value? Do you value what you've built here? Or is there this piece inside of you that's, because I can remember I was talking to a radio consultant when I was kind of looking for the next opportunity. And his name's Jason Barrett. He runs Barrett Media.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows him in our business.
We don't go to Benihana's on Thursdays,
sure.
but I know
you should. It's a good restaurant on Thursdays. But he said something to me that's always stuck. He said, look, I know your work because I cover the business. And I cover ratings, and I know that you've hosted the highest rated shows in that market for 15 years. I know that. Then he said something to me that's always stuck with me. He said, the dirty little secret is nobody even really thinks about Utah. Nobody even like thinks about the Salt Lake media market. Like if you're in LA running a TV station, you'll look at Seattle, you'll look at Portland, you'll look at Dallas, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said nobody really even thinks about Utah. Because I was kind of frustrated about like, hey, I feel like I have this body of work. Why can't I land here, there, or whatever? And he said nobody really even thinks about Utah. So look, if you're a fan of college football, if you cover college football, you know who Kyle Whittingham is. You know who Kalani Sitake is. If you're an average Penn State football fan, there's a good chance you don't even know who Kalani is. You don't even know what he's done here. And probably the name being leaked out there isn't doing much for you. Does that bother you if you're Kalani? Do you want to make sure that guy knows your name? Do you want to make sure that Kirk Herbstreit is talking about you the way he talks about Urban Meyer and Nick Saban and who Kirby Smart, Ryan Day? Do you want to be on that list? Or do you value what you've built in Provo, and is that where you want your feet to stay? And again, nothing wrong with either of it.
No, there really is nothing wrong with either of them. If Penn State will allow Kalani to build it the way he wants, right, and allow Kalani to understand like his value system, how he does it, the Lavelle approach, all these wonderful things. And Kalani's, I mean, I just can't say enough about his example. I could go off all day long, and I know I'm not alone. There's no short list of people who have Kalani stories that just impress you over and over and over again. And would Penn State have the patience to say, all right, 9-3, lost to some of the biggest teams, had one loss we're not proud of there, but we're building this under the surface, and it's going to break through like it did at BYU, but now on a bigger scale with Bob. Would they be able to do that? Mm. Or would they be the guys who start, feeling the heat and getting impatient, and then all of a sudden they're screaming and yelling and wanting major change? Because I got news for you. Franklin was a great coach. Mm-hmm. And I have a really good friend of mine who's a Penn State fan, and he hated him. And I always said, like, man, I have always been a huge fan of him, not just, like, I'm just watching what he's doing. And I get it. Like, you lose by 1/4 of an inch to top 5 teams. Oh, you can't win these games. Man, sometimes there's this weird play here, this weird play there. If you want to be critical here and there, that's fine. But, like, what I hate is, it was Jim Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State. Well, no, he's dealing with significantly fewer 5-star players than Ohio State. So he hasn't, then he did. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. Well, he can, he hasn't, he did. Mm-hmm. John Elway can't win the Super Bowl. He can, he hasn't, he did. Yep. Peyton Manning. Yep. We could go on and on and on. So instead, they just pull the plug, be impatient, freak out. So that's what I'm wondering. Does Penn State have the ability to have the proper amount of patience to understand that this guy can get you there? Yep. And if I'm Kalani, I'm going, okay, man, let's go over these situations. This happens, this happens, this happens, and you do what? Take me through it piece by piece. I would do that. I would hold it. In a job, in a interaction, getting ready for a job, I was like, I want to go over this scenario. Boom, 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 boom. And you do what? And then you send an email, you follow up there, and then you send a group text, and what would that say? And they're like, and you literally go over implementation. Yeah. Because everybody's so confident. And then, live games get going, and you'd be amazed how people can change and how things flip. And so you could put guaranteed money in a contract, all that. To me, if I'm Kalani, I'm like, I need to trust that when the wheels wobble, but we're still moving the right direction, you have the guts to hang in there and actually show me what you're about. Because the moment you don't, that's when this thing gets bad. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's the stuff that, I don't know. Like, to me, Kalani's all about character. He's all about trust. He's all about, like, all the stuff people want to throw out there that sounds good. Kalani lives it and is all about it. Authenticity is the number one thing. Yeah. I think fans would appreciate it. I think they should. But when wins aren't coming, emotions start flaring, and then other people with 2 commas or 6 figures in their paycheck, the big question is, do they then have his support? Because at BYU, they will. I'm telling you, Penn State, boy, Happy Valley, until one thing doesn't go right, and they flip inside out in a hurry. Yeah, it's a different world, and it is a sport that is run by impatient people at the highest of levels, and there are several examples, and we're seeing it take place right now in front of our face. We'll catch a break, but I want to do some more on this because I think I'm finally confident, Tony, in saying into a microphone that this week we're going to hear that Kyle's done, and Morgan will slide over his seat. So what does that look like? Also, some thoughts on the Jerry thing, as far as, like, with all the drama that Carl brought behind the scenes almost every year, it's invaluable as a coach to have 2 mega superstars that do show up for work and just do that. Do their job. That's what John and Carl did. Tony Parks live in studio. One more hit with Tony coming up on ESPN 700.
There are reports out there that BYU has held a, quote, emergency meeting this afternoon with a football program. I will only go off reports from college football media members who I trust, not weird bloggers who are looking for attention. Not with all due respect. You guys are part of the problem. Stop tweeting. So the reports are Kalani Sitake. This is according to On3. Brett McMurphy, credible guys. Kalani Sitake is the preferred candidate of Penn State. Andy Staples was on Dan Patrick's show this morning. You can hear Dan Patrick on this station, the highest-rated morning show in the market by far, by the way. And Andy was asked why we hadn't heard anything from Penn State. Dan asked him that, and Andy surmised that he believes that Penn State will hire a coach that is coaching in the conference championship games this weekend, namely Kalani. Tony Parks is live in studio. And last segment we were discussing just kind of the different dynamics that come into play when you're asked to make a decision like this. And, you know, I'm a sports reflects real life guy. I think a lot of people in their own career or in real life, if you have leverage, and it's pretty rare that you actually have leverage, I think you kind of owe it to yourself to explore it and utilize it to put yourself and your families in the best situation possible. And we were talking, Tone, about all the dynamics of the coaches in our market, which leads me to Whit. And he got emotional after the win against K-State when he was talking about his seniors. And he actually, the reason this is interesting to me, and I don't love the whole, hey, the body language is this or whatever, but the sentence that sent Kyle after the win was their last chance at Rice Eccles. It wasn't when he was talking about the game. Mm-hmm. It wasn't when he was talking about them. It was the sentence, their last chance at Rice Eccles, that caused him to get emotional. And so then he said, I always get emotional when talking about my seniors. And I'm like, dude, no, you don't. Sorry. I've been covering this thing and been around it for basically 25 years or more. You don't. And then after the Kansas win, he basically admitted that he was really close to retiring last year. I think this is it. I have not said it yet. I have not had the confidence to say it into a microphone until today. I think this is it for Kyle. Do you think it's it for Kyle?
It could very well be the case. And I think this is the most adaptable coach I have ever seen, maybe in any sport ever, especially college football. Look at how many changes took place while he was the head coach there. Post-Urban, social media, transition into Pac-12, right? Expectations continue to grow everywhere. Conference expansion again. Death of 2 players. I mean, I hate to have to bring that up, but I mean, something like that ends up happening. NIL, transfer portal, all these things that kept happening. And he just kept winning 10 games, threatening for a conference title, making it to a couple Rose Bowls, whatever it might be. That dude flexed the muscle as hard as it could be, no matter what ends up happening, all the way around. And then we would find out later on there might be an issue with a player, or, a problem behind the scenes. And it wasn't a cover-up. It was he managed the situation. Or the transfer portal. Oh, my gosh. Saban? No.
Saban bounce, yeah.
Gosh, no. And you think about different chapters of this sport and how it operates and how many different guys are. It's like, well, once it came here, they did this and that. But this dude here, this is as adaptable as any coach I've ever seen, and he thrived. And I think if you're a Ute fan, if that ends up being his last regular season game and then they go into this, their final game coming up, let's say, that you should be incredibly honored to have had him as long as you did, and with the success that he had.
So what this would mean, and my understanding is Kyle has until Friday to inform Mark Harlan or whoever else needs to know that this is it for him. So, Tony, what that means is Morgan moves over a seat, as we've known for years. This is going to be Morgan's job. It's the main reason Morgan never entertained any of the offers that came his way. And also the main reason we haven't heard anything about Morgan attached to a job during this crazy news cycle. Morgan's going to be the guy. So what that leaves is a hole at defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. which leads me to Jay Hill, right? So Jay, of course, is at BYU, and all the reports that I've read so far about this potential of Kalani going to Penn State do include Jay as part of the deal. And Kalani, because, of course, this is what Kalani would do. Like, if he brings A-Rod and Jay with him, he's going to, like, all right, make those two of the highest-paid assistant coaches in all college football. This is a package deal. If that doesn't happen, I can see two paths. I can see BYU making Jay Hill their next head coach. And, in fact, I would say that's the most likely situation. Okay. And I think Jay really wants to be a head coach of a P4 football team. He's been a head coach before. Obviously, we all know that. But I think he'd like a chance to run his own program. He has shown his mettle as a tactician, obviously, one of the best in the business. And I'm sure Morgan has thought about this or would consider it, but I think Ute fans would very much love a Morgan Scalley head coach, Jay Hill defensive coordinator setup.
I think they would love that for sure. I think it's going to be like if Kalani happened to go, the battle for Jay Hill is going to be so intense. I mean, that'll be an all-out war. I mean, you talk about battling for recruits and things like that. Jay Hill obviously wanted to be a head coach as well. But then, could you end up bringing him on the Utah staff as a DC? Like, so then BYU was going to go all in on Jay Hill, but you also want Jay Hill to have a staff that would stay in place because Kalani is quite possibly going to take people with him to Happy Valley if that ended up happening. Like, that is going to make it for one heck of an off season. So, yeah, where Jay Hill fits in this entire thing, if things shift, would be incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yep. Now, Kalani stays. Morgan's the head coach. Let's say they're at Utah. I look at it and say, well, I think Jay would probably like to stay there at BYU. That'd be my thought. I think he likes the situation that he has there altogether. But, man, the moment I think I know anything about what goes on in the coaching carousel is the moment I find out I know nothing.
Well, and then it's just wild to consider the possibilities as Jason Beck is a former BYU quarterback. Like, A-Rod goes to Penn State. Does BYU call Jason? Like, part of me is picturing all of these dudes in one room, and they're like, hey, let's just shuffle this around and make as much money as we possibly can. So here's the deal, Jay. I'm Morgan Scalley. I'm going to call you. I'm going to offer you the DC job. Parlay that into a rich extension of BYU to be their head coach. Jason, great job at Utah, but you're a BYU guy. A-Rod's going to Penn State, so now you're coming down to join us. Like, it's so funny to consider all of the dots and how they could ultimately be connected. And oftentimes – all of this is much ado about nothing because usually what happens is a coach parlays these negotiations into a healthy raise for where he enjoys being anyway. But the other dynamic that has to be brought up here is on Saturday, BYU's playing for a Big 12 championship. Ole Miss is going to make the CFP, barring something completely unforeseen. Lane Kiffin had his introductory press conference at LSU 2 hours ago. Kalani currently is talking to Penn State. It is beyond insane to me that this is allowed. Like, the players now are limited with their ability to transfer to one window, and it's a 14-day window coming up in January. And I think it's the right thing to do because it's hard to build a program. Like the old Saban story, when he was recruiting the final year before he decided to leave, a player was like, well, are you going to be here next year? And he said, are you? You tell me. Like,
yeah, right.
So I think there had to be some regulations put into play so players couldn't transfer to and from without any sort of penalty. Well, not even penalty, just like let's make it easier to build a program. Coaches should be under the same restrictions where it's like, no, if you're coaching a college football team, and look, they can never do this in the pros. They can never get this done in the NFL or the NBA. No chance. But like if you're coaching a college football team and you're playing for a conference championship or you're going to be in the CFP, you can't take another job until that's over. And then, of course, the restrictions would have to go the other way because you'd have to tell the schools you're not allowed to hire anybody until the season's over anyway. I don't know how it would work. I just picture, like, if you're Bear Bachmeier right now and you pull up your social media and people are like, dude, your coach is leaving. Or if you're the Ole Miss wide receiver that's all SEC, you have a chance to win a national championship, and your coach leaves you in the process, it feels really, really unfair to me.
Yeah, what I think is very challenging is we can get into the characters and morals and all of that. You have to restructure how this whole thing works. You have to restructure the timeline. I think they should restructure the calendar, the schedule, all of that to allow the transfer portal to just be open during all of this. You could have a player leave during a playoff run. That's happened before, and it's pathetic. And we could be like, hey, you owe it to your team. No, enough of that. The human behavior part, we understand people are going to do what's best for them. So let's just accept that. Okay, let's accept that rather than just hoping everybody keeps their word, because we can bash Lane Kiffin all we want on this thing, but he's doing what absolutely he feels like is best for him, and the timing couldn't be worse, and it's bad for Ole Miss, and it's bad for the sport. It's bad for – we could talk about that. Change how this works. Mm-hmm. Change it entirely.
Yeah.
And then if you start changing that, now you can start actually creating the alignment where the off seasons when coaching hires end up being made, the off seasons when the transfer portal opens up. You don't have people leaving in the middle of this thing. That's how they need to do it. So actually, I would say you front load this entire thing. I think every team should be playing this weekend, including the conference championships. You just restructure an extra conference game and you align who the non-championship game participants are, and that's how they end up playing. Mm-hmm. Then you go into the postseason, and there's no need to wait a month to start the playoffs. Just go ahead and wait 3 weeks to start the playoffs. Just go ahead and start it coming up, 11 days after the conference title games, whatever it ends up being. And you go through and you do this process in a particular way where you actually have some guardrails. I don't mind the NIL thing. I don't mind the transfer thing. I don't mind, but they just decided to leap before they ever looked.
Yeah.
And then said, let's kind of figure this out, how we do this as we go along. And it's like, well, no. That's how you end up with this disaster. Mm-hmm. And Lane's like, well, I asked him if I could coach the team during this. Well, no, I mean, you can't. And if I'm LSU, I'm like, no, we hired you to build this program.
Yeah.
So if we walk into next season and we end up being a bit behind schedule and you tell us to be patient, well, no, you spent 3 weeks with this other team. No.
Yeah.
See, it's different. Urban standing on the sideline going, good job, Kyle. Good job, buddy. He's getting ready for Florida, but he shows up for 1 day in Tempe. That's different.
Right.
But a whole playoff run?
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it needs to change, but it can't change with, hey, guys, from now on, you keep your word, okay? No. That's not how it goes.
Right.
So let's understand how human behavior works, put some guardrails to start understanding how it funnels the right way for the program, for the coach, for the player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. Like, the people in charge of college football have always struck me as the people, like, the house is burnt down and you're standing looking over the ashes and you're like, hey, we should install a smoke detector. And you're like, dude, the house is already burned down.
Yeah.
You install the smoke detector to avoid the house from burning down. Like, it's such a reactionary group of people. And as I always say, Ed O'Bannon filed his lawsuit in 2008, and you lost. That was 17 years ago. This was inevitable. If you paid attention to the tea leaves, players being able to profit off of simply who they are, which is the same basic economic right as every American citizen has, and then players with the ability to choose who they play for and where they play was an inevitability. And it was the failure of the people in charge to be prepared with any contingencies at all that has led us into this area of chaos and hypocrisy. And I think what Lane did is set a really dangerous precedent, but I'm not even blaming him.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's part of him that comes across as aloof and, uncouth and a little bit off-putting, right? And, he's clearly rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Obviously, he clearly can coach, too, because a lot of these people are like, hey, Lane Kiffin certainly is very overrated. Well, why do people burn down towns when he leaves? Like, every time he leaves, it seems to be really, really sticky. But he's allowed to do this. It's not against the rules. Now, can you talk about, because apparently calls were made to Dan Lanning, and Dan just said, no, I'm coaching a team. And I'm sure you kicked the tires on Ryan Day, but I'm sure Ryan Day was like, no, I'm coaching Ohio State. Maybe you can take some sort of issue with Lane being the one viable candidate who did say, yes, I am available,
right,
when apparently all these other candidates said no. But that approach also just made him $100 million and generational wealth. And people that cover college football have long believed that LSU is Lane Kiffin's dream job. And there are plenty of people that cover the sport that believe it is the best job in America because of where it is and the resources it has. So it's hard to blame him. It's hard to blame LSU. It's hard to blame Ole Miss. I don't think there was anything they could do. I just think you have to blame the system, and it's what we always land on with this sport, leadership that just seems to be entirely incompetent.
College football, and it's getting better, obviously. There's a 12-team playoff now. There's a number of things. It always reminded me of this restaurant we really like. The food's amazing, and every time I go there, the service is terrible. It's always a stressful experience, and then one bite, and I'm back.
You just forget all
about it.
And
I'm in, and I'm coming back again, and the thought of going there is like, why do we have to manipulate the system? Why can't we just change it? For the longest time, college football has always been lost in its dysfunction, and they try to sell it as charm. And I'm going, no. Well, that's what makes it great. One loss and you're out. What? That's what makes it great, because we can argue all day. It's like, yeah. Or you could just make it great by good competition and settling a champion without having to go undefeated in a conference that wasn't as good as theirs. Anyway, The point I'm making is whenever college football has its dysfunction, kind of looks around with shrugged shoulders like, that's just the way it is. We'll change it.
Yep.
Change it.
Yep.
And by the way, they've made some changes, which are good. But this is another one that would need to. And to your point, I think Lane Kiffin is just like, well, if them's the rules, this is how I'm going to play it. And if people are like, you owe it to those players, no, they could leave me at any minute, leave me hanging dry. They can absolutely, turn me into a villain, even if I do everything right by them anyway. So you know what? No, this is what he's saying is I'm not going to pretend that this is something other than what it is. The one thing I'd say, and by the way, great work on that interview was he was getting on his plane, is you can say, yes, I prayed about it, and I feel like this job gives me the chance to accomplish more and a better chance to do it regularly than when I was at Ole Miss. I could do great things at Ole Miss. I feel like with this structure, I have a chance to actually do even more often, blah, blah, blah. It's okay to say that. Players, you could say, yes, I prayed about it, and the NIL package was better, and I went with the one that fits me best, and that's where I'm going to go. It's okay to just admit this, guys. It's okay.
It's okay, and actually, I think it endears you to people a little
100%.
bit more when you're authentic and honest, as opposed to hiding behind this cloak that nobody believes anyway. It's like it's so disingenuous when you pretend a thing that I'm seeing is not what it is. Don't tell me I'm not seeing what I'm seeing, okay? So, yes, if BYU's paying A.J. DeBonsa $5 million for 5 months of basketball, don't tell me it's about the creamery at BYU and the experience. Save me the BS, please. It can be both. Kevin is a great coach, and proof of concept with Jaeger is in the NBA. Okay, AJ's dad believes that Kevin is the coach that can lead him to the pros. Fine.
100%.
You're also paying him $5 million, and that's okay as well. But before I set you loose, as you were talking about the Lane dynamic, in so many ways, it mirrors what Kalani's going through right now. Lane could have stayed at Ole Miss. They were going to match the money. He could have walked on WAD there as a demigod. I mean, hell, they were going to burn his house down. They were swearing at his 2-year-old son as he was getting on the plane. So he could have stayed at Ole Miss. He could have had the security and safety of keeping that job forever. He decided, I'm going to take another step up. I'm going to take the biggest job potentially in college football to show that my concept works there, which is, as we already outlined, Kalani's kind of mental model that he has to wrestle with. Your proof of concept is in Provo. Can you do it at Penn State? How do you think BYU fans would react if they woke up tomorrow and the news was Kalani is leaving? Because the fans in Oxford did not react well to the news with Lane.
I think that they would be disappointed. They'd be saddened. They love what he built there. And overall, I think they would say, dang, it's too bad we couldn't do what it took to keep him. Because you want to do what it takes to keep the guy. But I don't think that they would go on and hate him. I don't think they would call him.
You don't think they'd be angry at him?
No, I mean, you'd have some fans. You'll have a mixture of different people with this whole thing. But, if he wants to go, if he doesn't feel like what BYU can do to support him, whatever. If you feel like, okay, if I do what I do here, I don't have as good a chance to accomplish what I ultimately want if I go there. So if I go to Penn State, I have a better chance to accomplish all the things that I ever wanted. See, to me, Lane went to LSU because he believes he has a better chance to accomplish all the things he's wanted year in, year out if he goes there compared to Ole Miss. He believes that, and I think he's right. But in the case of Kalani, if Kalani says that that's what he wants, I don't see how BYU fan can be like, no, it's not true. It's not true at all. It's like, well, you might have an argument, but if Kalani believes that that's the case and he goes, well, then you have to respect that that's obviously his belief system there, and that's his focus there.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't think, here's my thing. If he stays, it doesn't mean it's an indication that he's playing small and he doesn't have the courage to go somewhere big. And if he leaves, I don't think it's a complete insult to BYU or lack of gratitude or not being a real BYU guy or any of those things.
Yeah.
This is a business at the end of the day, and it doesn't mean those other things don't matter. But I guess it comes down to this. Kalani, what do you really value?
Yeah, what do you
man?
value? Yeah.
And by the way, don't apologize if you go to Penn State. It doesn't mean your values are less or that it's somehow an indication that you're not an upstanding person. And if you stay at BYU, like I said before, it's not an indication that you don't have the courage to go somewhere bigger and achieve something great.
Yeah.
Kyle Whittingham went to a Rose Bowl. Kyle Whittingham had his team. Don't forget, he was in a conference championship game that if he ends up winning it, he goes to the playoff, right? He showed that he was capable of doing really great things at Utah. And I think Kalani can do very, the great things at BYU. He's knocking on the door of a playoff appearance. I think he can have them regularly in that position. So it all comes down to what do you value and what do you perceive you can actually accomplish. Best case scenario with regularity at BYU compared to Penn State. That's all.
It's going to be a fascinating 24, 48 hours. And, oh, by the way, we're playing football this weekend, man. It's pretty wild. Tone, always a pleasure, my
Dude,
friend. Be
you're
good,
the
okay?
man. You be good to yourself, man.
Yeah, you do the same, okay?
It's good to see you.
Our guy, Tony Parks, stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Advanced Window Products. Right now, it's a massive special. Different than the usual deal. You get $3,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. A little cold outside. Not sure if you noticed. Is your house cold at night, even though you have the heat on? Well, you probably need new windows. And these are the best people. Nate Orchard, still the mayor of Sac Lake City. Jake Weber, his buddy. It's a local company. They're here for you. So take advantage of this deal as the weather gets colder. Make sure you and your family are warm. Give Advanced Window Products a call today at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindows.com. Don't miss out. $3,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Give them a call. 801-850-9100. 5 o'clock hour of the program comes your way next on ESPN 7. All right, let's go. Drive at 5 time. Looking at a Monday afternoon, about 13 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Chilly weather today. Chilly weather expected all week as we have turned our calendars to December. Happy Monday to you. Appreciate your time on this Monday afternoon. Hope you had a great weekend. It's about 32 degrees and cloudy. And yeah, chilly temps all week long. Looks like we might bounce back up into the 40s next week. Hope you had a great weekend, a eventful weekend in the world of college football. Your pro football weekend will come to a close tonight. Little Monday Night Football. It is the New York Giants and the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium up in Foxborough, Massachusetts. We'll say goodnight about 6 o'clock. Then we'll send you over to coverage of Monday Night Football. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700. So we'll be joined by Matt Brown. Matt Brown is the editor of Extra Points, one of my favorite college football newsletters, covers the sport on a national level. And, of course, there have been a ton of college football storylines today. The main one that is picking up a lot of steam, picking up a lot of traction, according to a tremendous amount of sources at this point. Now we're looking at On3 being the closest, and it looks like Bruce Feldman has now latched onto the story that Penn State is in conversation with Kalani Sitake, BYU head coach, to make Kalani the head coach of the Nittany Lions there. No word as of now, but everybody who is on this story is kind of characterizing the same way. And in the day and age of social media, it is difficult to really understand exactly what is true and what is not. A lot of these people are simply looking for clicks. A lot of these people are bad actors that want you to click on their new YouTube show or whatever, that are reporting that this deal is as good as done. But ultimately, the people that I am seeing report this, that I would call reputable people, are all of the same understanding, which is Penn State would really like to hire Kalani. So On3, that's Brett McMurphy, that's Pete Nakos, and that is also Chris Lowe. All three of those media members seem to be rather plugged in. And now The Athletic is picking up on this as well, with Bruce Feldman being the latest. Seem to be singing the same song, which is Kalani is Penn State's preferred candidate to take over as their head coach. Of course, they fired James Franklin a year after James Franklin nearly won a national championship. So it is a tough job. It's one of the better jobs in all of college football. I don't know what the terms would be. My guess would be they would look at what Lane Kiffin received to leave Ole Miss and take over at LSU, which is a reported $13 million per year. And that's the starting number. Right out of the gates, it's 13 with raises and, of course, bonuses. The buyout would be massive. I would imagine Kalani's agent is going to look at what LSU gave Lane and said, if you want him to leave BYU, it's going to have to look a lot like that. 13 mil per, I don't know if they get to that number, but probably 8 figures right out of the gates. It would probably be a situation where Kalani's agent would ask for 6-7 years guaranteed, 10 million per there in the neighborhood, starting there, and then raises throughout the course of the deal. And obviously, as the way business is conducted in college football, a massive buyout that would be due to Kalani in full should they fire him before his contract was up. We've been discussing this throughout the course of the show today. Of course, no official news here. When it comes to the values of a head coach, the values of a person like Kalani, what does that look like? This will be on BYU to decide whether or not once and for all they actually want to pay market value for a coach they like. It's just been the deal down there. It's not whether or not they can. They very much could. Okay, they're paying a 18-year-old $5 million to play basketball there for 5 months. Okay, if they want to come up with $10 million per year to retain a coach they like an awful lot, they can do that. Let's get that out of the way. This is not about ability. This is about desire, and it's about whether or not you want to change the model that you've had there for years, which is we just don't pay our coaches market value. They changed it on the basketball side, where Kevin Young reportedly is being paid among the top college basketball coaches in the Big 12. Obviously, college football is bigger business. Simply, there are more players. We can start there. And then the going rate for a P4 coach that is on the precipice of competing and maybe winning a conference championship and going to the college football playoff, the going rate for that is not what BYU is paying Kalani right now. It just isn't. The reports are around $3.5–4 million. They restructured his deal, I want to say 2 years ago, after year one, the Big 12 became a reality. So now BYU is in a bit of a conundrum because they can put their feet in the cement and say, this is how we do business. And I'm sure for $3.5–4 million, maybe they slide Jay Hill over a seat. Maybe Jay Hill is the new head coach of BYU football. And BYU can say, we believe Jay can get similar results, and we're going to save $6–7 million per year because we don't believe we need to pay Jay what we would have had to pay Kalani to keep him. And this comes down to whether or not Kalani is actually asking for a match, right? And that's the thing we really don't know. Back to what do you value? Because if you're Kalani, you have to weigh out a couple of different things, all right? So in a way, this is similar to what Lane Kiffin was weighing when he decided to take LSU instead of staying at Ole Miss. A lot of people that are very plugged in to the national scene of college football have long believed that Lane Kiffin's goal was to be the head coach at LSU. That was his dream job. It's what he always wanted. It's like when Urban was here and people would talk about Urban and Ohio State or Urban and Notre Dame. It's like, okay, would Urban ever leave Utah? Well, yeah, if Ohio State came calling, he would leave. Ended up leaving for Florida, but landed eventually at Ohio State, right? So that's the way people have talked about their belief in what Lane actually wanted, right? He wanted the chance to show that his approach works at potentially what a lot of people believe to be is the best job in college football, and that is LSU. With the most money, with the most resources, a lot of coaches that aren't even very highly respected have gone to LSU and won a national championship. And even Brian Kelly, for what a curmudgeon he seemed to be, was able to recruit at a high level and compete more often than not year in and year out. It's thought to be one of those jobs where it's just kind of really hard to even be bad at it. Now, it comes with a pressure cooker. It comes with a level of passion, intensity, and expectation that the BYU job does not come with, right? And even for Lane, the new pressure he'll face at LSU will be heightened compared to what he faced at Ole Miss. But these two situations are not as different as they seem to be. Lane Kiffin could have stayed at Ole Miss, where he had a great 6-year run, one of the best 6-year runs in Ole Miss football history. Probably could have utilized that leverage to just stay the coach at Ole Miss for a number of years, have that job security, kind of be beloved in a smaller pond, and keep your job, right? Lane Kiffin decided he wants to show on the biggest stage whether or not his concepts work. Does Kalani want to do that? That's what this comes down to. Kalani, after what he's built at BYU, 10 wins for the past 6 seasons, 11 wins for the first time since 2001, the 7th time in program history, and the first time playing a P4 schedule. They're about to go to their first P4 conference championship game. Kalani's proof of concept works in Provo, Utah. And is that enough for him? And is the job security at Brigham Young enough for him? Is the ability just to be the coach of BYU probably as long as you want to? Is that all he wants? And if it is, by the way, great. Good for you. You've accomplished it. At the age of 50, Kalani's still very young. He could coach for another 15, 20 years if he wanted to. Could he do that just at BYU? Today, it feels like the answer to that is yes. Is his family happy in Provo? Does he like the quality of life down there? These are the things that you weigh out. But on the other side of it, I can tell you, even though Kalani is a sweet guy, a very nice person, leads with love, all the things he says he does do, he's also a competitor. Is there a small part of Kalani that wants to prove that his approach does work on one of the biggest stages in college football? He's a big fish in a small pond. That's what we are here, gang. That's just what we are. We're a small pond. We're a growing pond. Our media market is, I think it's 28. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, we were 32. And I think in another 4 or 5 years, with our population continuing to grow, a number of companies making their home here, an economy that is one of the best in the country. We just added pro hockey, right? Will the Millers be able to get the baseball team across the line? If the Millers get baseball here, we would have basketball, we'd have hockey, we'd have baseball, we'd have soccer. The one thing we'd be missing would be the NFL. Who knows? Maybe that's a pie-in-the-sky dream. Maybe that happens at some point. The Millers get the baseball team across the line. In 4 or 5 years, maybe we're market 19 or 20. Maybe we're a top 20 media market. But what we are as of now is still very much a small pond. And whether you're Kyle Whittingham, whether you're Kalani Sitake, whether you're Will Hardy or Quinn Snyder or Jerry Sloan or Jason Kreis or whoever, you are a big fish in a small pond. Is that enough for you? If the answer to that is yes, fine, way to go. Is there a part of you that wants to go prove what your model has proven here in Provo? Do you want to prove that you can do that at Penn State? Because if you do what Kalani did in Provo, if you do that in Penn State, you are talked about with Ryan Day. You are talked about with Kirby Smart. You are talked about with Nick Saban and Urban Meyer and whoever else you put in that category. Kalani goes to Penn State, and he does what he did at BYU. He is considered one of the best in the world at what he does. And until he does that, he'll probably still be considered as a good coach, but not one of the greats. Because the other dynamic here, and I believe this is about to happen, Kalani just won 11 games at BYU. They went 11-1 in a P4 conference. And they're going to go play for a conference championship on Saturday against Texas Tech in Arlington. And I think they're going to lose. And I think they're going to be left out of the college football playoff as a result. I can promise you, if you go 11-1 at Penn State and you play for a conference championship game, you not only will host a college football playoff game, you're probably getting a first-round bye. So does Kalani look at this and say, I've done all I can do here. I've got to find a place where if I replicate this performance, they have no choice but to let me in. It's interesting to consider. We'll see how it goes down. Going to be a really fascinating 24 hours in the news cycle. We'll catch a break, and we will get the thoughts of Matt Brown on this coming up on the other side of a Monday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700. All right, as we say goodnight to get you ready for Monday Night Football, no official news on the Kalani Sitake of Penn State front, outside of random people who I don't believe to be credible deciding to tweet things that I don't trust. Porter, we've done almost 4 hours of this without getting your take. I would say you're pretty plugged in locally on the college football landscape. What are your thoughts here? And do you have any thoughts on how this potentially will end when the dust settles?
A lot of thoughts that are swirling because that's kind of how the news cycle is throwing today at us. I mean, the reason there's smoke is because there's conversation. That is very clear. I would say that's more likely between Kalani's agent and Penn State than it is anywhere else right now. I do think it's a guy who's committed to coaching and trying to win a Big 12 championship. But there's maybe 4 programs in all of college football that can do this. If this was any other program besides Penn State, maybe Ohio State, LSU that you just mentioned, Kalani Sitake is saying, hey, with all due respect, I got a Big 12 title and a CFP to maybe prepare for. I don't have time for you. When an 11, maybe a $12 million check arrives at your desk, from what I understand, is there at this moment as we hang up, well, that's a different story. That's when things change to the point where, hey, even if you do see yourself as a messenger for this product, this BYU, this church product, well, you maybe can go do that at Penn State, and then in the NFL at a more effective level. You can probably put on a bigger show for BYU if you go and coach in the NFL. And maybe this is a stepping stone to that. I don't know. I don't know where Kalani's head is with that. But I can tell you that it's real because it's too big not to be. And I hope, and I really do hope, because I know people in that locker room, that this is a leverage play to get them all in a better position. And for the sake of the state of football, guys get paid, Kalani stays, and we move on. That's my hope. And I think that's the way we're going. I don't know if I would have said that an hour ago.
And you guys know this show. We are fans of Kalani and Jay Hill and A-Rod. Of course, got to know all of them when they were up here, and I want good things for all of them. So if that's how this plays out, I'll be thrilled. And, of course, we will follow this story as it continues to unfold. But it's time for us to say goodnight. Giants-Patriots coming up next, Foxborough, Gillette Stadium. Jackson Dart returns after sitting out with that concussion, so stay tuned for that. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the program?
We'll come back talking, of course, everything that we get from this wild day in college football, the coaching stuff. Hey, how about a little Tulane in the college football playoff, potentially? Mm-hmm. Sam Bruckhouse, former Tulane linebacker, stops by. I believe we will chat with one Spencer Linton on the BYU side. We'll see how the next 24 hours go. Bill Riley talking some Utes, of course, ahead of a Utah men's basketball matchup, and we'll go from there on the drive. But first, as you mentioned, ESPN Monday Night Football.
There you go. Comes your way after a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Special thank you today to Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester, Matt Brown, and Tony Parks. If you missed any of the sound from the show today, you go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app is available in the Google Play Store, App Store for free. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. Become a supporter if you have some time. We'd appreciate it. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So all you do is subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, give us all the stars they allow, and it helps us out. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Giants-Patriots coming your way, coming up right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.